Welcome all. The board meeting will come to order at 5 o'clock p.m. Good evening and thank you for attending the Albuquerque Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board meeting today, Thursday, April 10th. Ms. Barella, can I please get a roll call?
Sander Bullionitz.
Present.
Eduardo Budenaro.
Present.
Aaron Calderon.
Present.
Member Rowan Weimark. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Barella. Then the next order of the business is the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. All right, the next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Do any board members have any proposed changes or modifications to the agenda?
Not at this time.
None. Then I make a motion to approve the agenda as written. Can I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bullionitz.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Member Calderon.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Next order of business is the review of the meeting minutes. Do any board members have any proposed changes to the minutes from the meeting March 13th, 2025?
None. No.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bullionitz.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Member Calderon.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passed unanimously.
Wonderful, thank you. And then the next order is public comments. And I believe we do have a couple public comments.
Mr. Chairman, we have Ted Naminsky signed up for public comment.
All right, Mr. Naminsky, can you come up to the front for your public comment? Ms. Barilla, what is the time limit, if you can correct me, for public comments?
Mr. Chairman, on your agenda, it is noted on the agenda.
Oh, guess it is. It's really small, tiny print because I can read. All right. So, Mr. Naminsky, you have 3 minutes for your comment.
I'm sorry?
You have 3 minutes for
3
your
minutes?
comment. Yes, sir.
Fine, thank you.
Your time starts now.
Well, that's only, my name Ted Niemiecki. Yes, I couldn't believe it. There are only 3 members of board, Oversight Board. How can you believe it? Job should be done. No wonder. Let me ask you, what APD, private security, district attorney, and director of oversight, Diana, having in common? They all fraternal brotherhood. They're all gonna stand up for each other. Why? I will explain it. APD, after 2014, they start leaving APD, retire and leaving. Where they end up, most of them in private security. Well, they found a good place. They can do anything they wanted, less control, of course, because the government not involved with private security, and they got badge and they can do anything they wanted. And big $1 billion businesses will fight out, protect them. That's where we at. I end up, and I'm filing a lawsuit against Presbyterian hospitals, their security, APD, fixing, police report. So Diana, when I met her, she told me she's gonna order videotape. She never did. And at least she never called me back. I called several times last couple of weeks, during last month. She did not respond. Yes, I will subpoena all documents, complete video. I was brutally tortured. Why? Because I just went up there, asked what's happened to my next appointment with the pain clinic on my shoulder and neck. And that when was prearranged by that clinic, prearranged private security. While
excuse me
I
to
was
interrupt,
walking
Mr.
out,
Naminsky.
she attacked me.
We are at time. We're at the 3-minute time limit for the comments here, per the ordinance.
That's fine. I expressed myself, and I'm gonna take an action now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other comments written down, or anybody else for written comments?
Mr. Chairman, there were no public comments and there were no written comments. So Mr. Ted Naminsky was the only one.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, the next order of business is the reports from the city departments. The first one up is the Internal Affairs Professional Standards by Commander Johnston. Who's not here?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, honorable board members. My name is Paul Scotch. I'm the Deputy Commander of the Internal Affairs Professional Standards Division. Commander Johnson was not able to attend tonight, so I was asked to attend in his stead. It's my understanding that you have already been provided with the monthly report for March of 2025 that outlines the activity that's occurred within the Internal Affairs Professional Standards Division. And I won't go through it and bore you all with it. I'm sure you've read it. So if I stand before you now for any questions that you may have.
I guess the one question I keep coming down to is kind of the top 5. One already comes up is personnel code of conduct. It's still very vague. I guess is there any possibility to kind of break those a little bit further down into detail, right? Because that's a very large bucket, right?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I can understand your concern with that. I would imagine we could talk to the person who compiles the data and see maybe if we could break those 1-1s down. 1-1 is our all-encompassing conduct.
It's the catch-all.
Right, and so it might be better if we could break those 1-1s down for you so you can see, for example, any trends that may be happening with regards to truthfulness or any of those other issues. I will pass that on for you, sir.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
Board members, any other questions?
I had a quick question. It seems the things have shifted back to Southeast Division as far as the March reports. Northeast is still up there with a grand total of 1217 for the Southeast. Yeah. No, okay. I'll wait for the next person. Sorry,
That's
next.
it. That's the next, sir.
That's the one I was reading. And the question.
No
further questions.
We're good.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next one up is Internal Affairs Force Division.
That's
which
the
is what
guy.
you're looking at.
Yeah.
And this is going to be Deputy Commander Brown. Yes, sir. Yes. All right. Ha-ha. New things.
Yes, good evening, members of the board. My name is Joshua Brown. Commander Scott Norris obviously was not able to be here today, so I will be presenting March 2025 stats on his behalf. And as Deputy Commander Scotchbull stated earlier, I'm assuming that you guys were already provided with the use of force report for March. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of highlight two of the highest things that we're seeing on each form. So on the first form, we talked about obviously the use of force events by level, and it breaks it down by northeast and southeast. And we have a grand total, obviously, from March, northeast with the second highest of 12, and then the highest being 17. Okay, and I understand that you had a question for that.
How do you work the microphone? Okay, I got it now.
There you go.
No, the flip, Northeast was up last February and then into March, but it seems like it's gone back down and it's to the Southeast. Was there any cause that affected it?
So I can tell you that due to some of the initiatives that are being put in place with the Southeast Area Command, they're encouraged. The problem response teams are being encouraged to have more enforcement action with like quality of life types of incidences. And with those type of incidences, they're having more encounters with the public. And when you have more encounters with the public, inherently, you're gonna have higher uses of force. And so that's kind of why we see the higher numbers now in the Southeast, because that's been a big push to kind of clean up, especially along that central corridor. Okay.
So the jump between February and March, is that all driven by weather conditions? I mean, it went from February, 40 up to 57 in March. Will we keep seeing an incline as the summer
That's
months
typically
come on?
how it works with all things across the board when you're looking at crime, right? Crime usually increases when it gets warmer, and obviously that correlates with force. It's a direct correlation with force. When it's warmer, there's more people out, and then again, inherently, we have more police contacts with those individuals, and so that's why you typically see that increase. And clearly, we've had some wonderful weather out there, and downtown, everywhere else in the city, there's a lot more people out. Okay.
Thank you.
Not a question, sir. It's more dialogue.
Yes, sir.
To your point of the Southeast, I'm looking at the call level, so the total calls for service for that area. The Southeast had a total of 8,100 calls compared to like Northeast had like 5,000. And so that's where you see that difference. And of course, to Deputy Commander, more interaction, more calls, more possibility of use of force, right?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have to say.
I do have one that might be a little nitpicky, but that's me.
Yes, sir.
Down under total force of applications on page 6 out of 7, when it comes down to less lethal, there were about 5 missed 40 millimeter deployments.
Yes.
Versus 2 successful impacts.
Yes.
I don't like those. I don't like the percentage of misses to impacts on that.
I agree with you. So I can tell you that I'm familiar with the majority of these cases, and I can tell you that a lot of these situations where the 40 millimeter missed, they're dealing with an individual that's just he or she's just not stationary, right? So it's a dynamic event that's happening. This individual is moving, the officers are moving, and so we do definitely take that into account. We've let the range, our firearms range, know about a lot of these incidences because, when you're at the range, I can tell you that when we train with a 40 millimeter, it's, no stress, right? You're there, you're shooting at a stationary target. When you're dealing with an individual that may be combative, active resistance somehow, moving all around, right? And the officers moving around, it's reasonable to assume that you're going to have more, not more misses, but you are going to have misses during that.
Higher percentage chance.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And so if I heard you correctly too, is you guys are addressing this and kind of moving this over to the firearms and instruction to say, hey, let's try to do more add the stress and movement up versus just being static.
Yes. And so we're doing that with not only less lethal, but also lethal options. We're trying to induce more stress type of training to get officers ready for real world situations.
Perfect. Nope. Yeah, I just saw that and I was like, I just want to at least ask that question. So
All right.
I appreciate it. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And then next up is ACS with Mr. Bustamante.
Hi there, everybody. Glad to be back. Sent over, I'll try and get my volumes right here. Sent over some of the updates, but just at a high level, we anticipate to see our call volumes go up with the warm weather as well. It's been pretty common since our existence, but still at about 3,000 calls per month right now. What's interesting, and just one thing I kind of want to highlight out of that, and you can see the heat map, it's pretty consistent with what we see up and down Central, and then some areas like the far northwest and the rest. But you'll see about 200 suicidal ideations in there. And that may not sound like a huge portion of our overall calls, but suicidal ideations are an individual who is actively in ideation of harming themselves. That's why it ends up coded that way. And they might, if you know anything about kind of the process, there are things to gauge for. Do you have a plan? Do you have means? You know, where are you at in this? Those calls, all to say, not to give a lecture on it, but all to say are very long calls. Those usually are multi-hour calls. And it's just something that, you know, we've really been talking through on our side, that we are proud of our ability to spend that amount of time with the folks that are making those calls in. And what we do is just like, you know, what we're trained on the trauma-informed therapy and the rest, but also safety planning and everything else. And so those calls about a year ago were much lower, but they are going up. I don't think as a sign of society per se. I don't think there's a larger narrative, but I think we're getting better at making sure we're getting to the calls that we should be getting to. And that's probably one of the hallmark calls that deserves and needs an ACS response. So that's why I wanted to call it out here. Outside of that, though, you know, we forge ahead. We have an academy that just moved into its on-the-job training. And so they are out on OJT with whatever swing shift, graveyard shift, whatever it might be that they were assigned to. We have another academy that will be starting in the next couple months. We had, I think it was 11 make it to OJT out of this one, for a few fewer than where we started, but that isn't always bad news for us. We want everybody who can succeed to succeed, but you know, not everybody is always a perfect fit. We are expecting somewhere between 12 and 14 out of our next academy, and so those teams really do help. And again, that'll be a 3-month academy with a multi-week on-the-job training, evaluation going throughout. Summer of Nonviolence is coming. It'll start in June. We are actually working with county to finalize a calendar now, which will include more movies at Balloon Fiesta. That was my kind of personal favorite from last year. I love driving movies. I remember in the pandemic when they did more, and I thought, man, they got to do this forever, so we're just doing it now and making it happen that way, including movies in the park and some of the other fun stuff that we've had. Outside of that, really both the field division and violence prevention and intervention divisions are both growing and really showing some tenacity in how they program. One example of that is we're calling it for now like Youth Mobile Team. We're realizing that we work with a lot of kids in the schools, and the school-based violence intervention program has been really successful. However, there are kids who are not going to school, obviously, even like once every 2 weeks. They're just not going at all. They are completely slipping through the system. They might be interacting with CPOAB for a day, for here, for there, just completely falling through. And we are able to, with some of our relationships, get connected to some of those kids. And so now we're building out some programming to make sure that we are fostering that connection and to hopefully transitioning them back into a more sustainable place in society. Outside of that, just final piece I want to touch on is that we do expect somewhere around midsummer, maybe to late summer, the Southwest Public Safety Center will come live. We'll do what we usually do with a ribbon cutting and everything else, but I think I've mentioned it before, but it really is something. Swing out there, take a look at it. It's vertical now, and that's a space we will share with both police and fire. So spreading across the city.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to hear that that's going to be deployed here pretty soon and be live. And, you know, this is going to sound really bad, but I am glad that you guys are taking the time to do those suicidal ideation calls and that you guys are being leveraged for that, right? To your point, I don't think there's any more. I just think you guys are being connected with the right people. So that's great that you guys have the availability to take those calls and to handle them with the duration that it's going to take. So, any other questions from board members here? No? Awesome. All right.
Thank you all.
Mr. Bustamante. Next up on the agenda is the city attorney.
Good evening, board members. Tonight, I will keep my updates, per usual, limited to the cost of the court-approved settlement agreement. Coming up on Monday, April 14th, we expect that Dr. Ginger will file Independent Monitoring Report 21, the 21st report will be filed on Monday. The court hearing for that is scheduled for May 15th, and the site visit is expected to be that same week, the 14th through the 16th. And so I would expect, if you haven't already, you might be getting some updates about meetings with the monitoring team during that time period. And I stand for any other questions you may have.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
None at this time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, City Council, Mr. Sullivan.
Good evening, Chair, Board. Chris Sullivan, Albuquerque City Council. I'll be as brief as the City Attorney's Office. The only update I have is the agency and City Council staff, we meet once a month to catch up on everything that's going on and make sure that we're all on the same page. And one of the things that we're on the same page with is we are still looking for that extra board member, and we will hopefully have better news next month. I mean, we're going to put our heads together and see what we can do. And I'm appealing to the audience that's listening tonight. If you know somebody that wants to apply, go to the CPOAB website and apply. That's my update.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Board members, any questions?
Not at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I appreciate it. Next up is CPC's Kelly Mensa.
Good evening, Board Chairman. Good evening, Honorable Board, employees, officers, everyone else. We had another solid month with the Community Policing Council this month around the city. We started with since the last meeting, we had Chief Medina doing his round. He addresses each council generally twice a year, spring and fall, and he calls it the biannual state of law enforcement. He gives an update on certain events like the CASA progress, troop strength, numbers, APD initiatives, and just a whole variety of stuff. He did that in the 19th in the Northwest. We had a discussion following. Southeast on the 20th. On April 3rd, we had D.A. Bregman, who addressed the Southwest, and that was a really good time. A lot of the attendees, we sent this one out to a lot of people, and it was pretty well attended. A lot of people wanted to hear the DA speak and had a lot of questions. His main focus was juvenile crime, as you can imagine. People have a lot of questions and comments on that. And also Chief Medina was there as well. On the 27th, Chief Medina attended the Valley meeting, and we also had the Metro Homelessness Initiative. That was our last round where Markella Clinton and Erica Wolf and Yvette Tovar also attended all the meetings. They gave the information on what the city is doing for homelessness, what facilities they're opening, what their plan is to address housing shortages, which is now at 2% occupancy in Albuquerque, motels that are being bought, services offered to both landlords and the unhoused, and et cetera. The chief again attended the university, which is our second meeting in the new University Council on April 4th. We're building up attendance there slowly. We have 4 members of that council now. We had our YCPC meeting on the 18th, and that was the Youth Community Policing Council, in which we're trying to get this started again. Angelo Ragland, one of our youngest members, is looking at starting that. And we had 4 kids meet us to have dinner, and we discussed what would be integral for a Youth Community Policing Council to make kids show up. I'm not sure we really got our strong answer, but we got some things we could think about. These kids were 14 to 17. They showed up with their parents, and the parents thought it was an excellent idea. They'd give their kids something civic-minded to do. We'll see if the kids agree, because that's really what it's all about. But we are trying. We had 4 show up that night. Angelo said he has 3 more for the next meeting, which is going to be in May. On March 25th, I attended the Dismissed Charities biannual, or I should say quarterly luncheon. And Dismissed Charities is a halfway house, federal halfway house, in which people are released from federal sentences here in Albuquerque, and they have about 90 beds there, and they get there for maybe a couple of months, maybe a year, while they are reintegrating themselves into society, trying to find jobs and all that. And I figured this might be an opportunity for us to get someone who would not traditionally be doing this sort of volunteer work. Haven't gotten anyone from there yet, but we always go over there at least twice a year, address, and leave the information. At Northeast 49, which was our last meeting a couple of days ago, Chief Medina again, and we also attended a NACO workshop, a few members of the council and I and some other people on youth justice, and someone got a lot out of it. She said she really rethought what she thought about youth justice and is thinking about making some recommendations now. So a few of the councils have been looking into holding neighborhood events this year in local parks, so we are going to do that as well. We're looking forward to that, and possibly some sort of a summer event council-wide. We have not put that one together yet. Our council of chairs is going to be in 2 weeks, and hopefully we're going to look forward to that. That is my report. Hello, Member Wymark, and thanks everyone else, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mensa. Any questions? And then we're, make sure Member Romark gets seated all right here. Wymark, aye. It's going to be one of those days. Don't mind me. Any questions?
None at this time.
All right.
No
Thank you
questions,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mensa. All right. Next up is, let's hear from the mayor's office, Mr. Small. I don't think he is here. All right. Then let's go to the CPOA with Director McDermott and Deputy Director Abbasi.
Thank you, Chair. So the CPOA has received 80 complaint intakes from March 1st to March 31st. 28 of those were assigned for investigation between the CPOA and so a few of them to IAPS due to the ordinance changes. 39 were driving complaints, and those were resolved with the employee supervisor. And then 13 are miscellaneous, which either had insufficient information, it was determined that APD was not involved, or the complaint was satisfied with information request type of situation. We received 2 different commendations. The draft, as you already heard, of IMR report was received. The CPOA provided comments to the monitoring team by the March 31st deadline. The draft, as expected, had 4 paragraphs that were out of compliance with the CPOA regarding timelines and resources. All other paragraphs for the CPOA and the CPOAB maintained compliance. The final report will be forthcoming. You just heard the date. Sounds like it'll be April 14th, more than likely. The site visit, as you already also heard, was May 14th and 6th through 16th. Court hearing is on May 15th. It is a condensed site visit, so it is unknown for sure if the monitor will be wanting to meet with the board. However, if the board has any concerns that they want raised with the monitoring team, you can either forward those to me, or if you needed to, you could forward those to the CCO, so either option. The MOU between the CPOAB and the APOA has been redrafted. There was a minor language change that was made that should satisfy the APOA's primary concerns. The city has already agreed with that language, so we're basically waiting on a formal response from the APOA. So hopefully we'll have more next month. We'll see. A special order, I think we're just giving you the final update on this. Special order 25-32 that came out on March 17th. That's concerning an amendment to SOP 3-21 for the reminder, this is in reference to out-of-office type of notifications. The chief accepted that recommendation, and that's what that special order is basically stating for them to do that. It's a 14-day is a requirement for them to put the notification. SOP 1-78 is the PSA policy, and we had sent a letter to the chief on March 4th, and per the ordinance, the chief or the designee shall respond to the policy recommendations made by the CPOAB or CPOA within the 45 days. So we're not quite there yet, so towards the end of the month. So hopefully by the next month we should have a formal response for you. The mediation program, we actually have the contract moving forward. It's moved past city risk and is now with city legal. We do expect that it'll move forward fairly soon. The mediator has established some possible dates for working with the APD liaison to be able to roll out the program. So we're finally having a lot more progress and close on having a working mediation program. The results of the internal staffing study conducted by CPOA's analysts will be provided to the board during the May meeting. The IMT had received a preview for the purposes of IMR 21, since it was a talking point in several IMRs. We'll provide to the city entities for review and recommendations, and after that, if you see it. We also intend to have the semi-annual report for the second half of 2024 for the board to review next month. And the CPOA is finally going to be moving physical offices, physical locations, to 501 to Harris Northwest. This should be by the end of April. It'll take us a little time to kind of get everything situated, but we're finally getting to a place that'll actually be big enough for all of the staff. I stand for any questions.
Any questions from the board? The only question I have is, will there be a pizza party when you guys move into the new place?
Well, we'll see about
Okay,
that.
cool. No? Huh? If I'm paying, yes. Costco pizzas.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no questions, so thank you, Director McDermott. Next order of business is a standing item for serious use of force cases. We do not have any for this board meeting. So then the next one would be, or the next order of business then would be officer-involved shooting cases. We do not have any for this meeting, and so we will be moving on to agenda item 9, appeals. For the first appeal, it's going to be CPC 262-24 with Saeed. I think I wrote the last name wrong. Is that appellant here?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware that the appellant for that case is here at this time.
Perfect. Ready to go. Is Mr. Saeed Hamid here and present? All right, I do not, yeah, it's going to be down here. Cool. So I do not see Mr. Saeed present. So do any of the board members have any specific questions about the case?
None on that case, no.
Just an observation more than a question. It seemed sadly pretty obvious. I know that we haven't adjourned and come to a decision, but based on the paperwork and the videos, it seemed.
Do we need to go into closed session to deliberate?
On 24?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. And so he's not here. Then with him not being here, I do make a motion to affirm and uphold the findings of the CPOA director. Can I get a second? Second. Ms. Barella, can I give a roll call vote to uphold the findings of the CPOA director.
Member Bolianis?
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro?
Affirmed.
Member Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimark?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you so much. All right. Yeah, thank you, sir. Next one up is CPC 010-23, Mr. Anthony and Mrs. Naomi DeFalco. And then yeah.
Hello, members of the board. Thank you.
Give me 1 second here. Can council please give us a quick overview and process for the appellants here, and as a refresher?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Thank you. We are now at the appeals portion of the agenda, and the following processes will be followed during each appeal. During the appeal hearing, each interested party has an opportunity to be heard and present arguments stating their position. No new evidence will be permitted during the appeal hearing. The hearing today is a quasi-judicial hearing, and the decisions will be made by the members of this board. The scope of this appeal will be limited to the complaint and the findings of the investigation that followed. If parties during their presentation go outside of this scope, they may be directed by the chair that the only arguments that will be considered by the board are those relating to the complaint and the subsequent investigation. We are recording the meeting tonight so that a complete, clear record can be created of everything being said. However, please remember that we cannot create an accurate record with people talking over one another. If people start to talk over each other, the chair may call for order so that there can be a clear record of the hearing. The time limits for the hearings are as follows: 15 minutes for the complainant who requested the appeal or the representative. They may call witnesses, but this will count against their time. 10 minutes for the CPO director or their designee. 5 minutes for the police officer if he or she is present. 10 minutes for APD. And then finally, 5 minutes for the complainant or representative to provide a short rebuttal to anything that has been presented by the other parties. The burden of proof is upon the complainant bringing the appeal to demonstrate either, 1, a policy was misapplied in the evaluation of the complaint, or 2, that the findings or recommendations of the director were arbitrary, capricious, or constituted an abuse of discretion, or 3, that the findings and recommendations of the director were not consistent with the recorded evidence. These are the only bases upon which the board may modify or change the findings or recommendations of the director pursuant to both the ordinance and the board's rules. At the end of each party's presentation, the board will be given the opportunity to ask questions. These questions do not count against the party's presentation time. The questions should be focused on clarifying the record or the argument given and should not offer or invite new information or evidence from a board member through asking the question. Parties should remain respectful and professional during their presentations. Any disruption of another party's presentation shall not be tolerated. At the close of the hearing, the board will deliberate. The board may make a determination in open session or decide to deliberate in closed session as allowed by the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. All final decisions by the board will be made in public. Once a final decision is made, a final written notice of decision will be provided to all interested parties as provided for in the CPOA ordinance.
Thank you, counsel. And we do have APD representation, correct? Yeah, cool. All right, so DeFalcos, you will have 15 minutes and we will get the timer ready to go. I do ask, just for transparent, to not include officers' names first or last, so just refer to them as Mr. First initial of the last name, just for, try to keep for those officers. And I believe as well you have stuff you would like to play for the board as well, which we will allow as long as, you know, per council's instruction is on topic. If it is off topic, we will come back in and call a point of order to get us back on topic of the appeal.
Okay, I was told before the meeting started that I wasn't going to be allowed to play anything, so I don't have the computer set up and speak.
Oh, okay, then no.
Mr. Chair, if I might?
Yes.
I would just caution the board with regards to introducing anything outside of the investigation, the complaint and the findings in the report. And that's pursuant to the ordinance.
No, fair. I thought it was included in the original findings, so that's where I was mistaken.
Chair Folianis, so the information that you have received is the information that both the complainant had received as well as you. The item that was wished to be introduced was something that was not provided originally.
Okay, I thought that was already included in the documentation. So yes, then by ordinance, no new policy, so no additional evidence. Sorry. All right. Ms. Burla, are we ready to start with the timer?
Yes, I'm ready with the timer.
Mr. DeFalco, your time starts now.
Okay, thank you for hearing our appeal. On October 20th of 2021, we were told that our daughter died by suicide. Based on what we were told, we believed the police. Shortly after, in the coming days, just a few days after, we learned two very important facts that completely changed everything. First, our daughter did not die in the late morning of the 20th. That's what the medical examiner had told us that night when we were there about 11 o'clock. He spoke to us probably 11:30. We know that because I called her place of work the following week, like Monday, the 20th was a Wednesday, and they told me that, in fact, she was clocked in at work until 4:33 p.m. And I also like to state that that my daughter had made a comment to one of the coworkers when she left, "I'll see you on Friday." Second, the paper that the police told us was a suicide note was not, in fact, a suicide note. It was a paper that Annabella and her mother had written together the week before. And as we were learning these facts, her boyfriend, Joey, who was the one who was in her apartment and said he found her dead, started telling us some very bizarre things concerning the devil and that it was his fault and that he's a demon, that he has horns that need to be removed and they come back. And this is only one of the many disturbing things that we learned about Jose, or Joey Valencia, her boyfriend of nearly 3 years. Because of this, we were compelled to immediately contact the police officer involved that we met that night. That was Officer D, who gave us his card that night and told us to call if we needed anything. When I did call that following week, Monday or Tuesday there, he seemed very annoyed by the few calls I made to him, 2 or 3. I explained the time of death was wrong because I had found out from her work, and that we had the note in our possession and that there was no way that was a suicide note. I told him we had become suspicious of Joey Valencia. He told me nothing I said would change their suicide determination, and he talked to Joey that night, and Joey was too stupid to pull anything off. He finally told me to talk to his commander if I had any more concerns, and actually, before he said Joey's too stupid to pull anything off, he said he held himself back from saying the SHIT word and said, damn, didn't give a damn what he said. He was too stupid to pull anything off. If I had any more concerns, I could talk to his commander. So I got Commander Hartsock's number from him. I called Hartsock. He listened to our concerns. He agreed that an investigation should be open to address them. He gave the case to Detective Wilsey, who failed to complete an adequate investigation. I don't have enough time to recount all of it. Apparently, you guys have everything that you should have the 9-page complaint letter and then all the support materials that they acquired, police reports and my emails, including any attachments that were with them. There was a failure to interview Jared McHugh, one of Bella's neighbors, and misguided conclusions by Detective W regarding Max Haynes, Annabella's direct next-door neighbor. Max and Jared were two separate adjacent neighbors who reported that they heard arguing between a man and a woman and gunshots. They report that they did not hear any loud noises before late evening, between roughly 8 and 9. If we are to believe that Annabella took her life before all the commotion that Max and Jared heard. And that means, amazingly, that neither Max nor Jared heard 2 shotgun blasts in the apartment earlier that day. And I'll remind you that Annabella, she had to have passed between the time she got home, if she went home, right after work. So your time frame is really about 5 to 9. You'd also have to believe that later they did hear arguing, screaming, male and female voices, banging, and gunshots from her apartment. That was just Annabella home arguing with herself in 2 different voices, screaming for help, and then shooting herself. And then Joey just happened to arrive right after that. I spoke to Max the week after the incident, and later we had Jared formally interviewed by a licensed private investigator. There was failure to verify Joey Valencia's whereabouts the day of the incident, despite the fact that some of the people he was with were willing to give their statements. These interviews could have resulted in the issuance of a warrant for phone records and locations and other pertinent information. We met with Commander Hartsock April 7th, 2022, so that's roughly almost 5.5 months later. He promised several times in this meeting that Wilsey would interview Jared and Max Haynes before the case would be closed. He said he wanted to make that very clear, that the neighbors would be interviewed. He also explained that if any other witnesses come forward, this would be addressed. They didn't even address the 2 known witnesses. He also said that the gun could be examined for fingerprints. He also promised that we could meet with Detective W before the case would be closed. None of these extremely important things occurred before the case was closed. We were lied to, and I wanted to play the meeting that I had with, that we had with Commander H on that day, but I've been told that I can't do that. So I will say that he stated his name. Also, we had 2 friends with us, Ray Herrera, he's deceased now, and Kathy Varela, his significant other. And one of the parts that you could have heard would have been, he said, what evidence can overcome their suicide determination? That's what I assigned Detective W to do. Well, it would have been talking to those witnesses right away, because it wasn't done that night. Later, my friend Ray asked, was there a gunpowder residue test done on Bella? Commander H said, no. And Ray asked why. He said, you have to take that up with OMI. And, but he started an investigation because he thought there might be foul play. So why wouldn't he want that? Later, Kathy Varela asked if we can have a meeting with Detective W to ask the questions that Commander H did not have the answers to before the case was closed. Commander H replied, yeah. Commander H said if that person hasn't been interviewed, he will absolutely make sure it gets it done. And then later on, he went on to say that if anything that the witnesses, Max and Jared, say changes their probable cause to do warrants anywhere, then it does. And Kathy asked again for a meeting before the case would be closed. Commander H said, yeah, that's fine. Then he says, what we need is a good piece of evidence, and it might be those neighbors. Then he says, we're going to go talk to those neighbors. I want to make sure that's really clear. And then my wife Naomi asked if fingerprints can still be gotten from the gun. He wasn't sure if it was still in their possession. We told him it was. He said, then yeah. Okay, so yeah. So how can our complaint be unfounded when this interview, this individual, I'm talking to Jared specifically, was never interviewed? Max Haynes, he was interviewed by Detective W almost 8 months later. One of the only 2. And so I wanted now to highlight some problematic aspects of Detective W's report. So what I have here, I know you guys would have a tremendous amount of paperwork if you had all my complaint letter, all the emails, all the reports. What I have here are 7 pages that I would like you to see before you so you can see what I'm talking about. Like, they should be in your possession already, but this will make them easy to put it in front of you and see that. Is that okay? I have one packet for each of you.
I'm going to request counsel. So, Ms. Perla, can we pause for right now while we're checking with counsel?
Mr. Chair, I haven't seen these 7 pages. If they're in your packet, then I think you can pull them up. That's all I can say. Is otherwise, it would be something new.
That'd be something new.
Well, none of them are new. We verified with her, and can we just, I mean, if you just look at them later, I mean, they're everything you have, but.
So, can CPOA staff do a quick review first? Is that?
Chair Bolina, so prior to the meeting, there was a description of what they were. I did not actually view them. To my understanding, the complainants are saying that these are just the highlights of pieces. I can't speak to whether those highlights are painting a different picture than the full material. So, you know, again, if there is a question that the board has after hearing whatever the referenced points are, then you may want to just clarify it at that point. But to have it prior to might, I think, kind of constitutes new evidence because of the formatting. So I don't know because I didn't look at them, but I do understand the content apparently is the same as what's in your materials, is my understanding. So I don't know if that clears it up for you, but
It kind of makes sense that due to formatting, it's new, but I mean, then it's, if the content is still basically what we got, I, again, want to go to counsel.
Again, Mr. Chair, if this is some original product that they have made that hasn't been previously produced, then, and it hasn't been shared with everybody else, including APD and all the other parties that are interested, I think there's a fundamental fairness issue here, which is generally everyone should have access to everything that's going to be considered in advance of the hearing. And so while it very well may be an outline or a consolidation of what you've already been provided, if it's some new original product that they have produced, I would strongly recommend you not accept that and just rely on the information you've already been presented with in your packets.
Thank you, counsel. I think with light of the recommendation of counsel, because it very well could just be formatting, which would classify it as new, and then again to council's recommendation and comments of being fair, I think right now we should not see those items. But you can refer to them, but I just don't want to be given those items for the board members. Yeah, and technically we should already have them within our packets that we have reviewed. So with that said, Ms. Perla, can we start the timer back up, and can you give us a time?
Their time was 9 minutes and 54 seconds.
Okay,
So they have roughly about 5 minutes.
So you guys have about 5 minutes, 23 seconds left. So time starts again.
Okay. Willsie's confusion about the anonymous caller regarding that. Willsie's reports that Detective W reported that he located a supplemental report from an anonymous source, which he believed to be Max Haynes. He states that in page 3 of his report. Willsie was wrong. That is Jared McHugh, who contacted APD on November 4th, 2021. That was about 2 weeks after the incident. We also have the police report to show that Jared called in on that day to give information that could be useful in the investigation. We had previously informed Willsie in early December that Jared had called APD, informing them that he had useful information about the event on October 20th. So why is Willsie confused about the anonymous source? He would have to know also if he read my email, which I also had my email to show that I sent him that information regarding Jared. And I also mentioned that to him in the one phone conversation I had with Detective W in that whole 8 months. And I explained that Jared initially wanted to be anonymous. Then you have Max's 911 call on October 20th at 9:04 p.m. He hears his neighbors arguing and banging on the walls going on for 10 minutes now. In Wilsey's report, he said he spoke with Max June 8th. Again, that's almost 8 months later. Wilsey came to the conclusion that the loud bangs and noise that Max described hearing was consistent with 2 expended shotgun shells on the scene. That is also in Detective W's report, page 3, that the banging that Max heard is consistent with shotgun shells. With the shotgun shells found there. So I also wanted to submit a screenshot that I had from Joey Valencia to me at 9 o'clock exact. So that tells you that Joey Valencia was there when Max had called and said, I hear neighbors arguing, banging, okay? That should have made it clear to Wilsey that Joey was in the apartment at the time that Max called 911. Wilsey said that Max did not hear any other argument or disturbance other than the loud bangs, but if you look at Max's 911 record, he says right here, can hear neighbors arguing and banging on the walls. It's been going on for 10 minutes now. They're being really loud. They. And Max, I talked to him a week later. I went to the apartment complex 1 week from that Wednesday, knocked on a bunch of doors with my father, my father-in-law, and my friend to try to figure out if anyone had important information. So that's when I spoke to Max directly, and he explained, you know, this loud banging, and he heard help, I can't move, I can't breathe. He described it as her. So also there was failure to verify Joey's whereabouts by Detective W. I spoke to Joey's employer, who said they would be willing to provide information about when Jose was at his workplace, though he was not working that day. He was there, and they said that they would be willing to speak to us, but a police officer needed to be present. And that also that Joey had left a note about he was leaving at some point, so he left a note. And I thought, boy, that's interesting. That could help verify timelines. I communicated that also to Detective W, and he never followed up on the whereabouts of the whole person that we're suspecting. Why Hartsock even said, yeah, that's some concerning stuff. We'll look into it. So also, Jared McHugh was never interviewed. I had a recording of him. We interviewed him by a private investigator. He reports what he heard that night, that he heard arguing outside of his house, that he thought around 8 or 8:30. We don't have a perfect timing with him, not like Max, because he made a 911 call, but Jared was also home all day. Both of those men were home all day, except for Jared had left between 6 and maybe at the latest he got back at 7:30. But then around 8:30, he hears arguing, a man and a woman. He stepped outside his door. He doesn't hear clearly what's being said.
Thank you, Mr. DeFalco. That is the 15-minute mark. So with everything that we've heard, does any board members have a question for the appellants?
Not at the moment, no.
All right. So if you guys want to take a seat, we're next going to hear up to 10 minutes from the CPOA director or designee. Ms. Burley, do we have the time?
Time's ready, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you for presenting. CPOA director, your time starts now.
Thank you, Chair. We do want to start out by expressing our condolences to the family concerning the situation. But based on what our role is here, we are not death investigators. We do not change or challenge OMI's findings. We are strictly here to look at whether or not the APD personnel complied with the basics of policy. We are not here to investigate the actual either alleged crime or suicide, whatever it may be determined. That is not the role of the CPOA. So I just wanted to make that very clear. In terms of the initial date, APD responded to the scene where a female was found in the room with a gunshot wound. The boyfriend allegedly had discovered the body and had called 911. A neighbor was interviewed, the one that actually called 911 at that time, and gave their statement. One of the witnesses that the complainants mentioned about, Max, so Max was talked to that particular night as well and gave his statement at the time. The lieutenant and OMI personnel, and to mention that the boyfriend was detained at that time as a potential suspect. He was in handcuffs. He was detained and questioned at that time. So the lieutenant and the OMI personnel, along with the CSS, they investigated the scene and they looked at the trajectory of the bullet, the weapon used, the position of the deceased, and other physical evidence of the apartment, excuse me. Big issues being there was a lot of knickknacks and things like that that were not disturbed, indicating there was no struggle, no fight. There was a lot of undisturbed things in the room that would have contributed to a different finding potentially. The lieutenant spoke to the family that night. They were expressing concerns of their daughter's state at that time, some issues that were mentioned, stress, school, things like that. Then there was the, just absolute, no, the boyfriend couldn't have done this, loved her, statements like that from the family. The OMI later did receive the concerns that the DeFalcos later posed, and through their examination still maintained the determination that it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So they were aware of the concerns, but maintained their finding. Since they had made the determination of the manner of death was suicide, due to the request of the DeFalcos, so it was not that there was a suspicion of homicide, it was because there was this concern, because there was this request, a detective was assigned to it to take a second look and look at the various pieces of evidence that were provided by the DeFalcos just to make sure. So they had taken that information. The recording that was mentioned about Commander H, the CPOA did not receive that recording, so some of the statements that were made regarding that recording, we cannot verify that. We did not receive that as part of the investigation. When it comes to the issue of fingerprints, the agency had, or the independent investigator had interviewed Commander H, and it was not his awareness that any fingerprints could be obtained from ammunition like that. However, this being a boyfriend after being fired, the boyfriend had access to the apartment. So whether his fingerprints were on the ammunition or not is not a conclusive element because he has access to these things as being in his home. The promises that were made, again, we couldn't verify that these were promises, but the interviews of the witnesses, so Max was interviewed again, the one in neighbor. His stories were inconsistent depending on when he was interviewed. At one point he said one thing, another point he had said he'd only heard one voice, either a female or potentially a high-pitched male. So that was the statement of Max. Jared, we did listen to, the investigation listened to the interview that was provided by the private investigator. And his statement, Jared, was considered, he had called in anonymously as the complainant had mentioned, and that was a part of the record. So that was considered. There was the allegation that a male and female voice were heard arguing, but in at least the interview with the PI, it was at a distance, far away. There was no identification, at least at that time during that interview, that it was for sure that specific apartment. Additionally, it was asked of him if he had seen the boyfriend in the vicinity or at the apartment. That individual did not know what the boyfriend looked like, could not attest to his presence. So neither witness, neither neighbor, I should say, were a actual witness. They did not see anything. There was some auditory information that they had provided to the police department. So both stories were a part of the overall investigation. According to the information that was received, Detective W did attempt to interview Jared, and Jared acknowledged that he had received attempts, but they never connected. So the fact, again, that we're looking at, were the reasonable steps made or were the attempts, was the investigation conducted? Through all of that information, there were those pieces of information. The DeFalcos had sent numerous emails to the detective as what they called evidence, and discussed, as you'd heard, about the nature of the boyfriend's mental state and things of that nature. But the overwhelming amount of information, at least based on the information that was accessible to the CPOA, to the detectives at the time, is the lieutenant at the scene, the OMI, the CSS, they all made the determination at that time that it was a self-inflicted or a suicide. And then that was reaffirmed by the OMI's physical investigation of the decedent, that it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The DeFalcos had brought forth a suit through the courts that was actually dismissed as having the merit that was rejected, basically. So we are looking at basically just what did the department do in this circumstance, and did it comply with policy? Warrants were attempted to be obtained, but they were denied. So that is kind of the gist of it, is that really it's important to just know that we don't investigate the death. We're just looking at, did the policies bare minimum get followed to look at this situation. Missing anything? So I think that's it.
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Do the board members have any questions for the Executive Director McDermott?
None.
Thank you. Next, we have allotted 5 minutes for the actual police officer if he's present. He's not present? Okay. Then we have 10 minutes allotted for APD as representative. Ms. Brilla, are you ready for the time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the time is ready.
All right. Commander, if you can, please state your name, and then your time will start now.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and board members. My name is Henry Landavazo. I'm a commander with the Professional Integrity Division of the Albuquerque Police Department. And I know you already know what our role is, but just for the sake of the family. First of all, before we begin, I do want to offer my condolences to the family. I also have lost a daughter, and that is something that you just never get over. So my condolences to you, and I'm sorry. And on behalf of the police department. My role in this is reviewing the CPOA. Obviously, the DeFalcos filed a complaint with the CPOA, got investigated by the CPOA and their investigator. Once their investigation is complete, they send us the case. We review the case, myself and my colleague, Commander Sean Waite. We do an independent review. I review it first, or he does, and then we pass it on to the other. If we concur with the CPOA, then we concur. And in this case, we did concur. We had no disagreement on the findings of the case. Sometimes, we call the CPOA and say, we may not concur with this, or we don't, we just not concur and it comes to you later. But in this case, we did concur. And I would like it to be known that the commanders and the detective, was a lieutenant at the time, was where they were charged with violating SOP-1-5-A.4. And that SOP says, department personnel shall obtain information from the public in a professional, prompt, and courteous manner. And they shall then act in a proper and judicious manner within the scope of their duties. That's what they're charged with violating. When Commander Waite and I reviewed this case, we read the whole case, review all the videos, and concurred with the CPOA of unfounded as, first of all, Commander H, at the time he was Commander D was a lieutenant at the time. And he was working a special operations, and he was working out of the violent crimes unit. So he had access to violent crimes personnel. He responded to that scene from the special operation he was doing because he heard that there was a firearm involved, which is proper for him to do. So he responded to that call, and he learned that it was a female deceased with a gunshot wound. So he was not only there, they also called a crime scene specialist who had extensive training in deaths. So they made the determination that it, and then first let me back up. When they arrived, the gentleman was already in the police unit. So they had a person there that initially didn't come out of the apartment, and so they were kind of wondering why he didn't come out right away. And he was claiming he was distraught and those kind of things. So they, Commander D, or Lieutenant D at the time, he looked at the scene, and he was involved in violent crimes in the violent crimes unit. So he had been to many death scenes and came to the conclusion that it was a possible suicide. Ms. McDermott also said that when they looked around the apartment and you look at the videos or the OBRD camera videos of that scene, there was no signs of a struggle or anything like that. There was little knickknacks that were still in place, so indicating there was not a fight. He conferred with the crime scene specialist who has extensive training, and they determined that it looked like a suicide. Then the medical investigator has their own independent investigator come to the scene. The police department has no jurisdiction over the body. It's strictly OMI. They came to the conclusion that it appeared to be a self-inflicted wound. So they called it a suicide that night. Then the case eventually went to the OMI, and the medical investigator completed a report indicating that it appeared to be a self-inflicted wound, and she called it, I think she determined the case was a suicide. So the department doesn't make the findings on its own. I mean, we go, and if it's suspicious, then and I mean, when you look at it, they put the guy in the police car, so they weren't just taking his word. They did an investigation. Now, the gentleman they talked about, the neighbor, a gentleman by the name of Max, he did get interviewed that night, and he did get interviewed later. So Mr. Del Falco apparently was not happy with Lieutenant D, and he asked for his supervisors, which time he was put in touch with Commander H. Commander H made contact with him, and the case was already closed, was being ruled a suicide. But Commander H agreed to open the case, or not open the case, but keep it open until he assigned a detective to look at all of the concerns they had, because they wanted to make sure the family was satisfied that everything got looked at. So he assigned a detective, and during Mr. DeFalco's presentation, he said that it took months to interview, and that is true. And the reason is because the detective that was assigned went on Family Medical Leave Act. And you just can't predict when those things happen. If somebody puts in by federal law, you got to give them that time off. So I think he took 3 months off. Then after that, he was involved in another case that he had to take off for being involved in a department-involved incident. So he was forced off for that period of time. So it wasn't that he was kind of sitting on it, although it did wait, but it wasn't because they weren't doing anything. There was just nobody there. So there was no other detective assigned to this other than Detective W, who was a missing persons detective. He was not a homicide detective, as our homicide cases are out the roof, and they're extremely busy. Had this been classified a homicide, the homicide unit would have responded, but it was not. So a missing person who works alongside the violent crimes unit homicide detectives looked into it. I would just say that the executive director is correct that the CPOA doesn't change the findings of an investigation. And the police department doesn't either, really. We'd have to get with the OMI. They're the ones that make the determination of a cause of death. So it's not as simple as saying, well, if we do all this, we can open the investigation again. It's been determined by the OMI that the case was a suicide, and the case is closed. So we looked at the case, and we felt that the CPOA did an adequate job, an adequate investigation, and found that the officers were unfounded based on that SOP that I read to you.
Great. Thank you, Commander. Any questions from the board member for Commander?
I was just curious, how many times was the boyfriend interviewed after the initial detention, when he was detained initially in the back of the police car? How many
He was
times
initially
after that?
spoke to by the officers arriving, spoke to another officer, I believe, on the scene as he was handcuffed. And I don't know that the detective actually interviewed him later. As the detective, and reason for that, and I didn't mention this, is the detective resigned from the department, so he was never interviewed by the CPOA because the detective was gone.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Commander.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, we have one question.
Would it not have made sense to assign another detective? His absences were kind of marked.
Ma'am, I can't comment on the staffing of the homicide unit. I don't know if it made sense to them. The case was ruled a suicide, so I don't know that they have another homicide detective to assign to it. So I can't comment on why another detective wasn't assigned. That's strictly a management problem or issue with the violent crimes detectives.
Okay.
So I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
All right, no further questions. Thank you, Commander.
Thank you.
So I'd like to invite Mr. Falco and the family back up here. You guys have 5 minutes just to kind of as a rebuttal for the CPOA and APD. Ms. Brilla, is the time ready?
The time is ready, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Falco, your time
Okay.
starts now.
First of all, I'd like to say that I did not ask the CPOA to investigate a death. The detective did not do the basics. CPOA said that they did the basics. Not talking to witnesses that heard, neighbors that heard, that's not doing the basics. Not when the commander also agrees that that should be done.
Yeah, they spoke to one neighbor, but the other neighbor had a very concise report. He had no questions at all of what he heard and when, and that was the one that was conveniently left out.
Can I also just say something, please? We were also lied to right from the start that there was a scuff mark on the bed frame. There was no bed frame.
Okay, yes, we were definitely lied
We
to.
were lied to
There was no
multiple
note,
times.
and the time of death was wrong, so yes, we agreed. We thought, okay, she killed herself. We'll believe you. But, okay, anyway, you say what you want to say. We were completely misled.
Yeah, Max also said that he was not talked to that night. And yes, our daughter was under stress. That's one of the reasons why we kind of thought, okay, maybe it was suicide. We never saw the strange side of Joey in 3 years. This is someone that we knew for 3 years. And all this stuff that came out from him was shocking and disturbing. If you guys have the information, you know how crazy it was. I did call OMI. I told them it was under investigation. Police did not call and say, hey, OMI, we're actually going to be looking into this. So maybe you should do a few other things like check under her fingernails. Joey had some scratches in reports. It says on the police reports, scratches on his hands. There's some pictures. One in particular, it's on his pointer finger, a fresh cut across this part of his knuckle, and one on his pinky here. So if he hit a wall, like he said he did, that makes sense here. But if he pulled a trigger on a shotgun he wasn't used to using in the trigger guard and that went back, that makes sense for a cut across his knuckle.
We don't have that much time, but we were promised that this man would be talked to.
Yeah.
Promised that we would meet with Wilsey. This is the death of our daughter. Very traumatic. And this man, Mr. W or whatever, he was supposed to look into it. We never even met with the guy. Never. The entire time.
8 months.
We never even met with him. They gave us absolutely no respect at all and blatantly lied. The case will not be closed until we talk to the neighbors, until you meet with Mr. W. None of that was done.
Okay, and regarding fingerprints that the previous officer was saying, well, Joey could have had fingerprints on those. He should not have had. This was a single shot shotgun, which meant one shot that was fired in the apartment. The police called a test fire. I have police friends that said, I've never seen a test fire in a suicide, and multiple other police I've talked to said the same thing. But the point is, one of those shells was left in that single shot. They don't eject on their own. Joey told us, I held 2 shells. I held 2 shells. So why wouldn't you want to get fingerprints? Because if maybe he was trying to cover his ass by saying he held 2 shells, that didn't make sense. I thought there were 3 shells because of that fact. Because I knew 2 shots happened. One into her bed, one into her, but he held 2 shells. It was nighttime, so Jared, no, he wouldn't have seen the boyfriend. It was dark outside. It's October. It's fall. It's already nighttime. It's been dark. The fact that Detective W never got Jared's testimony is just crazy, and Commander H broke his promise. The case that I brought against the police department, it was thrown out not because of some kind of, they considered things that I had to say. They threw it out because I didn't know you can't sue the police department directly. If I would have sued the city of Albuquerque to get to the police, they might not have been able to get rid of that. But I did not know that. The medical examiner said that was there, told us that night that they believed she was coming out of rigor mortis. And that was around 11 o'clock, which then they thought, okay, we think the time of death was 11 o'clock a.m., but that could not have been because she was at work. Again, no one heard anything until both of those guys heard arguing and gunshots. So I think what actually was going on, she was going into rigor mortis, and the OMI report, I believe, supports that, because if you look at the OMI report, it says the next day when they started examining her at like 10 a.m., she was in full rigor. So much for their medical examiner's assessment that night. Wilsey's in his leave time, the 3 months, they never told us.
Going to interrupt.
Is that a policy break?
We're at time. So I thank you for sharing. But yeah, we're at time. So next, I move for the board to convene in closed session as authorized by the Administration Adjudication Process exemption of the Open Meetings Act for a limited purpose to discuss the presentation of CPC 010-23. May I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Perlin, may I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianis?
Affirmed.
Member Budinaro?
Affirmed.
Member Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimark?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
So next, we're going to.
She caught my eye before you caught my eye, sorry. I was looking at both of you and I was off.
All right, I make a motion to come back out of deliberation. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Romark. Ms. Berlin, may I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianet?
Approved.
Member Budinaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passes.
Thank you. May the DeFalcos come back up, because then we can speak to you guys. You know, I don't even know how to adequately express my condolences to you guys, right? I am not I'm not a parent, but I could not even imagine the pain losing a daughter, sister is about. I can't even express words, and I know everyone here and the board really feels for you guys, right? Like we really, yeah, it's there, and I don't know a better word. So with that, during our deliberations, we as a board spent some longer time than on this one, and we as a board are actually going to review the policies that support case handoff for anyone going on extended leave or FMLA for officers, as well as looking into the policies concerning suicides. I think that is definitely been brought to our attention by you all, and it's something that we definitely need to look at. Now that said, during our deliberation as well, we have determined that we have not met the 3 requirements to overturn the findings of the CPOA director. There is some dissent, but first I want to make a motion to affirm and uphold the findings of the CPOA director. May I get a second?
I second.
Thank you. Member Calderon. Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianet?
Affirm.
Member Budinaro?
Non-affirmed, no.
Member Calderon?
I believe you do have some comment.
Can't yet.
Okay.
I'll vote. It's a vote.
Okay.
Stand by.
Affirmed.
It's a vote.
Oh.
Let's come back.
Oh, so yeah, go ahead.
Ask again.
All right, so Member Budinaro, you voted no?
Yes.
Not affirm?
Not
Member
affirm.
Calderon?
Affirm.
And Member Weimark?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your motion passed 3-1.
All right, I do give the floor to Member Budinaro.
You can hear condolences and my sympathies and all kinds of kind acts and words. It hurts. As a parent who's lost a child and as a parent who's lost a sister, there are so many things that really troubled me, and that was the reason for my vote. Procedures are procedures. We are not a body that determines what goes on exactly. We can make recommendations for standard operating procedures with police officers, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at. But I've stood in your shoes and I understand. And I just wanted to express that's the reason why I dissented.
Thank you so much.
Member Calderon?
With that, we want to assure you that we will look at these policies that our chair has described. We do have a subcommittee that handles all the policies for APD, and all APD policies are reviewed on an annual basis as well. And we have the authority to pull them out and do ad hoc reviews as well. And so we will take this and your guys' message and the pain that you guys have to help us influence these policies to ensure that we are putting the best foot forward for Albuquerque police officers and that they can do better at any time, at any point through any investigations or interactions with the public. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Now, with all that, and thank you, board members, I definitely do appreciate that. Do you guys, the DeFalco's understanding, do you guys understand the ruling that we're providing?
Yes.
You will also receive written communication as well with the board's finding, but I hope all the different, the side notes of the board members really express empty, I feel like they're empty words, the condolences. And I do also really thank you guys for bringing this and standing here. And I know it's been four years, 21, 40 years?
3.5.
3.5, yeah. I'm lost for words. And as my board members know, that never happens. Yeah, thank you guys for coming tonight. And yes, to echo Board Member Calderon's point, we will be looking at these policies swiftly.
Okay, I appreciate that aspect. Obviously, it didn't go the way we had hoped or anticipated it would. And you all have voted, so there's nothing I can say that can influence it further. You made your decision, I understand that. One thing I was not able to say, since you're looking into procedures regarding into people going on leave and whatnot, the one time that I did meet Detective W when I dropped off my daughter's phones to him, that was the only time I encountered him. And he introduced another detective with him and said, "This is Detective Z, that's my partner." Well, we never heard from him. So how come there was nobody else handling it when Detective W was gone? Never heard from that guy ever. And then also, you know, I understand you guys must handle a lot of complaints, and we just stated it's been 3.5 years. It's been over 2 years since I turned that complaint into CPOA, and since you're the board, I think you should know how it went. That after I turned that complaint in, I believe it was Miss Valerie Barella. She accepted my complaint that day. I think her name's stamped on the complaint. It was only maybe 2 weeks later, if that, that Agent Rob Brooms contacted me and said he would be starting it. And months would go by. And then I would call him and he would say, "Oh, I haven't started it, but I'm about to start it." Well, the first time he said he was going on vacation. This was like 6 months later. But when I come back, I'll be starting it. Okay, so his month, and then 6 months down the line, and I call again for an update. So, "Oh, I haven't started it yet, but I'm getting ready to start it now." 6 months later again, call for an update. Rob Grooms, again, "I haven't started it," very apologetic. And I said, "At this point, you know, it's been a very long time, and you've told me each time you're getting ready to start this. So, you know, I believe you." I told him that you're inundated with stuff and you just can't get to it. But I'd like to speak to someone above you if I could, please. And he said, "That would be my director, Diane McDermott. You can reach her." And so he told me call her. I called her and I asked for callbacks. Never heard back from her. And then months later, again, this is about 22 months into it, I talked to Amber Mares from Universal Investigation Services called. So they never did it. It went to Amber Mares. of a contracting agency did this review. And she contacted me. I verified with Rob Grooms, this person who called me as a legitimate person taking over this investigation. And he said, yes. So I contacted her again, and I said, okay, I'll agree to talk to you. I asked her at that time, does she have Jared McHugh's interview? And I asked her how long it might take. She said, we only work on one thing at a time. So I'm on your case now. I said, okay, great. It went from October of 24 to February of 25. And I called her because I'm like, it's been 4 months. If she's working on ours, boy, that's a long time. So when I was able to reach her, she said, I've been done since November. I turned it back into CPOA. So that means they had it back for 3 months. Nobody talked to me. So I said, well, what can you tell me? Can you tell me the findings? She said, I can't tell you anything. You'll have to contact CPOA. So I called. I talked to Rob Grooms because I had his number as a contact. I said, Amber says it's done. Can I get the results? He said, you'll have to get them from Diane McDermott. Okay? So I call, and I started for a week and almost a half. Each day, I'd call once a day. And if someone answered, I would say Anthony DeFalco, I'd like to speak to Diane McDermott. Okay, I'm leaving a message for her to call you back. That went on for a week and a half. She never called me back. Valerie called me back. And, so I think you guys need a new director, and based on who I've spoken with and how professional they were versus nothing that I got, I think you got a better director sitting down there at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Pelican. All right. With that, this concludes the hearing for Appeal CPC 010-23.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. The next appeal will be CPC 116-23. Miss. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Director McDermott.
Thank you, Chair Bolianitz. I just did want to, provide a little bit of a response to some of the information. So it is absolutely acknowledged that there was a significant delay in performing the investigation for this case. We have had numerous staff changes, people not being available, high volume of cases. So totally acknowledge that the length of time that this case took is not our norm and is, not acceptable. Absolutely understand that. I would have to review in terms of messages and call logs and things like that as to often or not. The case reviews do take quite a bit of time as well. And again, this is an important case. There's a lot of things that had to be looked at, so the reviews did take some time. So I just wanted to, not trying to make excuses, but I did want to put that on the record, that there is significant delays that have occurred for the agency. We've had the death of an investigator, we've had investigators leave, we've had to reassign cases a couple of different times to make sure that they do get worked. We do make sure that they get worked. We've hired the contract investigators to help accomplish that. And in terms of the messages, again, I'd have to try and dig into that and see how many and things like that. But that's all. I just wanted to make sure it was on the record that, I can apologize for the length of time, but at the same time, it is unfortunately not the only case. It's very important, and that's why the review does take a significant amount of time as well, to make sure that the information is looked at appropriately, especially since it was ultimately done by a contract investigator. I want to make sure that it was done correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Now with that, I can move on to the next agenda, CPC 116-23, Miss Audrey Medina. Medina, sorry. I apologize, I'm terrible with names. I know it's been a while. Council, do you want to reread the formalities, just for as a reminder?
Sure. I may summarize a bit, but this is the appeals portion of the agenda, and this is the process that will be followed during the appeal. During the appeal hearing, each interested party has an opportunity to be heard and present arguments stating their position. No new evidence will be permitted to be introduced during the appeal hearing. Since today is a quasi-judicial hearing, the decisions will be made by the members of this board. The scope of the appeal will be limited to the complaint and the findings of the investigation that followed. If parties during their presentation go outside this scope, they may be directed by the chair that only arguments that will be considered by the board are those relating to the complaint and the subsequent investigation. We are recording the meeting tonight so that a complete, clear record can be created of everything being said. Remember, we cannot create such a record if people talk over one another. If people begin to speak over one another, then order will be called by the chair. The time limits for the hearing are as follows. 15 minutes for the complainant who requested the appeal or the representative. They may call witnesses, but this will count against their time. 10 minutes for the CPOA director or their designee. 5 minutes for the police officer if he or she is present. 10 minutes for APD, and then finally 5 minutes for the complainant or representative to provide a short rebuttal to anything that has been presented by the other parties. The burden of proof is upon the complainant bringing the appeal to demonstrate either 1, a policy was misapplied in the evaluation of the complaint, or 2, that the findings or recommendation of the director were arbitrary, capricious, or constituted an abuse of discretion, or 3, that the findings and recommendations of the director were not consistent with the record evidence. These are the only bases upon which the board may modify or change the findings or recommendations of the director. At the end of each party's presentation, the board will be given the opportunity to ask questions. These questions do not count against the party's presentation time. The questions should be focused on clarifying the record or the argument given and should not offer or invite new information or evidence from a board member through asking the question. Parties shall remain respectful and professional during their presentations. Any disruption of another party's presentation shall not be tolerated. At the close of the hearing, the board will deliberate. The board may make a determination in open session or decide to deliberate in closed session as allowed by the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. All final decisions by the board will be made in public. Once a decision is made, a final written notice of decision will be provided to all interested parties as provided for in the CPOA ordinance.
Thank you, Council. Mr. Medina, as stated, you'll have 15 minutes. Again, I do ask that you refer to all officers as officers or Mr. and then their first initial, their last name, just for the officers. Ms. Barilla, can you let me know when we have the 15-minute timer set?
The timer is set.
All right. Ms. Medina, your time starts now.
Hey, thank you for allowing me to come in and discuss the findings that were made regarding my complaint. My first question is, I received the police report, and while looking at the police report, I noticed that there's incorrect information included on the report. On Saturday, November 19, 2022, I work for an airline here in Albuquerque. We had quite a few passengers in the check-in area, and I was working the ticket counter. I was approached by another coworker and Officer SG. Officer SG approached me as I was working with the passenger, stating he had reason to believe I had stole some items. And I turned to him and said, if you don't mind, let me finish up with this passenger because I don't want anyone to think that I'm stealing from them. And he said, no, I need to get into your office ASAP. I did review his video, and I don't see that information in there. Prior to him walking up to the counter where I was at, you could hear him from the escalator saying my name out loud. And that's what brought my attention to him and the other employee. Once I finished with the passenger, I did ask him what was he looking for, and he named off some items, which happened to be an iPad and some Ray-Ban sunglasses. And I turned to the employee and said, "Why did you bring the officers here? You had every right to address me. You had made a couple of phone calls to me on my private cell phone asking about these items, which I had no knowledge of them." Officer kept saying he needs to get into my office to look for these items. I didn't have any problem with it, and I allowed him to go into my office with the other employee. Once we got into my office, he started looking around, and I said, "Look for what you're looking for. I have no idea what you're looking for, but I do not appreciate you walking up to me in front of all the passengers and saying my name and then discussing the theft of some items." He did look. He asked me what was our protocol on items that were misplaced by other passengers. I gave that information to him. Once he finished looking in my office, I did advise him we could look in my supervisor's office because someone had to have opened up my door to allow them to put anything in my office. But the items that he was looking for was not in there. When I walked out of my office, there was another officer standing out in the break room, Officer KW. At that time, I turned to her and said, "What do you need?" Because to bring in a female officer means that my impression was she was going to search me. I did advise them that I didn't take the items, didn't know what he was talking about. The items came up missing the night before, but because I had worked the gates that morning, he assumed I had had them. Due to my position is very high in the company. I manage all of our expenses and finances and items that are misplaced by our passengers. Approaching me in front of everybody was very unprofessional. Once we got done, one of my other coworkers ran into the break room and said, "There's someone on the phone wanting to talk to you." And I'm like, "About what? I'm being harassed by these officers right now. I don't really want to talk to anybody." But that person wanted to advise me that she had placed an iPhone and a pair of glasses and some court documents in my office the night before with my GM, which those items didn't have any business going into my office. They should have went down to our baggage service office. So when Officer KW and SG finished talking to me, they went out into the lobby and they stayed there for a while. We did receive a phone call from the passenger who had put from the employee who had put those other items in my office, advising me that it was an iPhone and not an iPad. So I asked the officers, "What are you really looking for?" And he said, "An iPad with a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses." And I said, "Well, I don't know where that stuff is." After the fact, they believed that I didn't have it because they did search my office. They didn't find them. We did get a phone call from the other employee verifying that I didn't have the items. But the coworker who was accusing me, who had brought the officer, wanted them to review the cameras at the airport, which he did not allow because we didn't find the items. So my concern comes to the police report when I looked at it, because I did want to file a complaint against my coworker. This police report does not state what really went on between the officers and I. So that was my concern, is why is this police report falsified? It does not bring up the information of what really happened during our encounter. I did receive a phone call from Officer KW, and she had stated to me over the phone, she said, "I do not know what the officer wrote in the report. I did not read it, so I'm not sure what was said." But then she called me back another day and said, "Actually, I was the sergeant who signed off on it." And the conversation that we had was, "Then why did you call me and tell me you didn't know what was in the police report? But now today you're telling me that you're the acting sergeant that night that signed off on his report. Why was my name not included, and why was the details of what happened not included in the police report?" So that's why I brought the appeal, is because the findings don't say anything of what really happened. I made numerous calls to the department trying to get an update on on the status of my complaint. I was told that someone had passed away. The investigator that was on it had passed away. I was told about issues with staff staffing. This took a long time to get a report that there's no findings, but also to get a police report that is falsified because it doesn't say what they really did that day.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. Board members, do we have any questions for Ms. Medina? No. Thank you. Next up, we have the Executive Director for the CPOA. Ms. Barilla, do we have a time set for 10 minutes?
The time is set. Thank you.
Executive Director McDermott, your time starts now.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just say, of course, as Ms. Medina had raised at the very end of her presentation, that yes, absolutely, again, another case that is unfortunately a very delayed case. You know, it's not what we look forward to, it's not our expectation, but our situation is such that there were several cases during this period of time that wound up being much later than they should have been. So we acknowledge that. We did our best to make sure that the cases are still worked and thoroughly addressed. Regarding the allegation of a falsified report, the report was created for informational purposes only. There was no victim that came forward to press charges. Ms. Medina was never identified as a suspect. The officer's decision not to include the name was based on that status. She was not a person of interest. She was not a victim. The body camera footage confirms that the interaction was professional. I'll go into some of the other points that are raised here. I'm not sure the board had the access to the lapel, as did the complainant. Many of the statements that were made here are not supported by the video evidence. So that is the primary reason for the report of her not being included. She wasn't a person of interest. She wasn't treated as a suspect or anything of that nature. She had mentioned an aggressive encounter, that the officer came up and interrupted the discussion with the customer and things like that. When the officer approached, she was helping the customer. Her coworker engaged with her first, not the officer. And then the customer left, and the officer introduced himself, and it just explained he was assisting in trying to find missing iPad and sunglasses, not that there was any accusation of theft. So to move on to that, the initial statement allegedly made by Officer G says, "I need to get in your office," and implied that she stole items. The OBRD footage clearly contradicts that claim. The officer never said that. Mr. Martinez, again, the coworker, had made some statements, but the officer was clear, saying, "I'm not saying I need to search you. I'm not accusing you." Allegations that the officer searched her office. Again, the officer did not enter the office per the OBRD. She and Mr. Martinez did, the coworker, but the officer remained outside, and he was just there, and he insisted that he was just there to assist, and he was not accusing her of anything. So again, there was no search. There was no actual search performed by the officer. The let's see. Again, mostly it's just everything that's pretty much been just reported here has been refuted by the OBRD. There was not a tone, there was not an accusation. The information about the report, acting sergeants or sergeants sign off on reports. They don't remember the content when they're signing off on things, and then later they may say, oh, if it was brought to their attention or asked or something about that. They pretty much just go through, hit the highlights, move on. They don't really retain knowledge about these various reports when they're signing their name, and then when they're brought back to look at them later, then they might, oh, okay, I remember that incident or something of that nature. So the CPOA conducted a thorough investigation. It basically clearly shows that no misconduct occurred. The OBRD refutes most of what was stated, and again, the report issue was clear that the incident didn't occur as at least Ms. Medina recalled or perceived, and the report itself is then just a informational report to reflect the situation, but she's not included because it wasn't any accusation against her.
And just to add to Director McDermott's statement, at multiple points during the interaction, and it can be looked at, confirmed via the OBRD footage, the officer explicitly stated on multiple occasions that I'm not accusing you of anything. And Ms. Medina responded, I know he did, referring to the other party involved in the incident. And she further told officer, I'm not upset with you, you're just doing your job. These exchanges, along with the voluntary cooperation shows that the officer maintained a professional demeanor and did not accuse her of a crime. While we acknowledge that Ms. Medina's personal feelings, our responsibility is to base findings on the evidence, and the available evidence, particularly the OBRD footage, clearly supports the officer's account of the interaction. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott, Deputy Director Abbasi. Board members, do we have any questions for the CPOA Director and Deputy Director?
No, not at this time.
Nope. All right. I'm going to assume that the officer is not here. So next up is 10 minutes for APD for the commander. All right, then.
His time's set. Just wanted to let you know.
Perfect. Commander, if you, again, restate your name for the record, and your time starts now.
Okay. My name is Henry Landavazo, Commander with the Professional Integrity Division of the Albuquerque Police Department. Good evening once again. Just for the benefit of the appellant, I'll just give our role again. The case is investigated by the CPOA. It's forwarded to the police department. Myself and Commander Waite do an independent review of the investigation to ensure that it was a complete and thorough investigation, and this was, and we concurred with their findings. They also alleged that the violation of the SOP was 1-1-5-A4, same as in the last case, which officer shall be professional when dealing with the public, and that they act on the information that they have. In this case, we felt that Officer G and Officer W did. So the case started off with a review, and it was, I reviewed the police report submitted by Officer G. The report is an incident report. It's not alleging a crime. It's not alleging a theft. It's not alleging any suspects. And in watching the OBRD video footage, the officer even approaches the appellant and tells her, we're looking for some lost property. And he had learned that the property had been placed in her office. So just to back up a little bit, the other employee, the United employee that approached or called the police, he said that a passenger on a plane had left an iPad and sunglasses on a plane, and this other employee by the name of Jose said, I found them and I put them in I guess one of their stands at the ticket counter. And then he forgot about them and he left. And he had said he spoke to the passenger and told him, hey, I do have your stuff, but he left. So the next day he went in and he looked for the stuff and it wasn't there. And he was told that a supervisor had placed the items into the appellant's office, which was locked. And she does say that nobody has keys to it except supervisory personnel or herself. So somebody had to let him in there. So and that's why the officer even explained to Jose that we're not investigating a theft, we're just trying to find the property. And he's treating it as a lost property thing. And he said, doesn't the airlines even have some kind of procedure you should be doing? He asked the guy that a couple of times that he was interacting with him, and he was kind of alleging, he never come out and said it, but he was alleging that it was possibly taken by the appellant. Well, the officer never said that. The other airline employee said that. So when they approached the appellant, she was at a counter helping a passenger, and he just said, "Hey, we need to talk to you," and then backed off. She finished her transaction with the customer, and then they walked back to her office. And as Director McDermott said, he didn't actually search her office. There was no search by the police. The employee went in and somebody else went in. It wasn't, the police didn't go in, so there was no search. He did write the incident report, and the appellant's name is not listed on there as a suspect, and that's to her benefit. Why would anybody want to have your name on a police report, even kind of alleging that you're involved in some kind of theft or had knowledge of it or something? So it's to her benefit that she wasn't mentioned. And I guess in her complaint, she says that the report is incomplete because he didn't include her information. So again, the report, that doesn't make the report wrong. He just didn't put that information in there because I don't think he even had enough to. He went in an office to check, and she wasn't the suspect. And somebody could take inferences that because she's listed on a police report with lost property, she could be involved. So I think it was to her benefit that she was not listed. So we, myself and Commander Waite, reviewed the case, and we concurred with the finding of unfounded on this case.
Thank you, Commander. Board, any questions for the commander?
From it.
Well, I actually have one quick question
Yes, sir.
for you. And having gone through the Civilian Police Academy and understanding that they do train officers to be sensitive to certain things, I believe it's called cultural perception of law enforcement that causes feelings to be different from what others might perceive.
Okay.
So basically I'm saying, as Ms. Medina, I understand what your feelings are. However, when it comes to this board findings and the things that we look at, we have to look at the facts and what the report says. And being excluded from a report is not an accusation. And I've gotten to know the procedures pretty well when it comes to policing in Albuquerque. And frankly, it's something that's really drilled into their head to try to be as understanding and communicative to individuals with different backgrounds. So I know it's something that's ongoing. I know it's something that they train, but I fully understand the feeling too.
Yeah, we're going to cut you off here.
Wait, I didn't have a time limit.
No, well, yeah, we're going to so with that, thank you, Commander. And then I'm going to re-invite Ms. Medina back up. You have 5 minutes to do a little bit of a rebuttal from what the CPOA Executive Director said and Commander of APD.
Okay.
So your time starts now.
Okay. So repeat what he said about my name wasn't in the report. Yeah, that's a good thing my name wasn't in the report because I didn't commit a crime. But I was always told that anytime you have an encounter with a police officer, especially with the severity of how the other coworker made a big deal out of it when we had already spoken on the phone about the items, it was the way the officer came up to me in front of everybody. When I reviewed the videos, I didn't see the part where they got off of the escalator and was approaching me. And if I didn't see it, I'm sure you guys didn't see it. So that at that time, that means his camera wasn't on. There's a lot of videos showing where he was talking to the other coworker down at the gates. And then when he got up to where I was, I do not see him in the videos coming up the escalator, coming to where I was. So that would be a concern. Why was his camera off? The officer said that SG did not search my office. He did. He went into my office and he looked only in one place. And me and the coworker was arguing, and he advised the coworker to get out. He said, "You need to get out of her office." Again, yes, my office is locked up at all times, so a supervisor did have to let someone in there. But again, the items that he was looking for was not in there. So I want to make sure that's verified. It was not in there. It was some other items. Let's see. There was a witness that confirmed how Officer SG did approach me. And I do know that you guys spoke to them, to both of the witnesses that I had provided you guys with, because I was told by them that they got a call. So with that being said, I just feel like Officer SG did not write his report out as thorough as he should have and as honest as he should have, regardless of what the outcome may be, that my name wasn't in it because I wasn't a victim or a criminal. The thing is, he did approach me. He did approach me with that attitude of, we're looking for some stolen items. I have reason to believe they're in your office. I'm not sure what that definition would have been other than you're accusing me. Once they seen that it wasn't in there, then their whole perspective and professionalism changed. And so that's why I was upset in the beginning. And then in the end, I did state, you're only saying that you never accused me. You didn't believe I had them because it was proof that I didn't have them. So that's where I disagree with the findings, because he literally falsified the documents.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. So next, I do make a motion to move the board to convene in closed sessions as authorized by the administrative adjudicatory proceedings exemption in the Open Meetings Act for the limited purpose of discussing the matter of CPC 116-23. May I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Barilla, may I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianis?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimer?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passed unanimously. I make a motion to come out of deliberation. May I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote to come out of deliberation and continue the appeal hearing for CPC 116-23?
Member Bolianis?
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro?
Affirmed.
Member Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimer?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barilla. Ms. Medina, do you want to?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Apologies, and I may not have been paying attention. Was there a second on that motion?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
Thank you, Counsel, for clarifying.
Sorry.
Ms. Medina, during our deliberation, we have determined that the appellant has not met the criteria for modifying the ruling of the CPOA. And so with that, we do affirm and uphold the findings for the CPOA. So with that, I do make a motion to affirm and uphold the findings of the CPOA. May I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianis?
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro?
Affirmed.
Member Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimer?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Ms. Medina, do you understand the board's ruling? With that, you will receive written confirmation of the ruling here in the coming days. Don't necessarily have a ETA on when that will come, but you will also be getting a letter as well. So with that, I do thank you for coming and, speaking with us and, airing this out. And we're all here and grateful and thankful that you're doing that. So I thank you for coming and chatting with us here tonight. All right, nobody else? All right, with that, that concludes the hearing for the appeal CPC 116-23. With the next order of business is the reports on the CPOAB subcommittees, policies and procedures presented by Member Calderon.
Thank you, Chair. Our meeting was held on April 3rd, 2025 at 3 p.m. at the Plaza del Sol building in the basement. We evaluated a couple policies that we'll review in the next agenda item, so I won't discuss them here. Our next meeting will be on May 1st, 2025 at 3 p.m. Location to be determined. Yeah, we'll post it prior. With that being said, that's all I have for this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Calderon. The next order of business is discussion of possible actions. The first one up is air support unit presentation. So one of the things that I want to do is something that we haven't heard of, like from the ambassador program, is get just a presentation of what the air support is doing, just some data metrics behind it, and just kind of get a overall presentation of the air support unit, because that's not one that we have heard from yet, and I just would think it would be helpful for us and the citizens of Albuquerque to get that report and have it recorded.
What data metrics are you looking for, so we can advise CPOA to request that?
Oh, well, really make me struggle on that one. I really want to see deployment rates, the success, what's the ROI, right? Like I just want to see a lot of the data at different points. And the benefit to the community as well, right? So give me the data of why it's beneficial to the community, and the success and their KPIs, right? I assume they would have KPIs, so I'm going to want to see their KPIs.
Executive Director.
Thank you. So I would just ask that, you kind of rattled that off pretty quick. So what I would suggest is please, assuming the board is going to all agree to have this presentation, is send an email or something that lists out the things that you're looking for so that I can forward it to the appropriate individual.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely send that out for sure. But I believe Member Weimar.
I just wanted to make the point about the drone from the Real-Time Crime Center coming in. We don't necessarily need to have the Real-Time Crime Center. We don't need to have the real-time, but presumably Air Support Unit will be conversant with what's happening with that and what the overall plan is about the drones.
Yes. To my understanding, it's still under pilot. It's not a formal program yet.
Yeah.
So I don't believe they would have much information on that drone program at the moment.
They can still present what they might have if it falls under them, because we don't know if it falls under them. Yeah, we can put that in an email.
Anyway.
Member Boudinar, did you have anything?
No.
All right. So are we, as the board, are we all comfortable to get that presentation, and then I will send out the email to Executive Director McDermott for what we're looking for from a data perspective? Yes. Cool. All right. Now, so I will make a motion. Oh, I don't have to make a motion? Sweet.
Council?
Council, do I need to make a motion?
I don't think, Mr. Chair, I don't think a motion's necessary. It's listed on the agenda. You're making a request. There doesn't seem to be any dissent on this.
All right. Then Executive Director McDermott, I'll send you all emails with what the data points we're looking for here. The next item up here is the semi-annual audits. So with this board, this is part of the ordinance that we need to start doing. We've been here a little more than a year now, so it is time to start doing audits. So we're not bringing that up yet, but we will probably need to make a ad hoc committee to deal with the audits.
Okay.
So get prepared for that to be brought into the next one to make it formal, and then who wants to chair and all that other stuff. So that will be coming down the line. Am I Executive Director McDermott?
Since it is on your discussion and possible action items, if you are ready to, you can establish what that ad hoc committee is going to look like in terms of your membership and set a tentative date to then meet as the ad hoc to discuss then the process that you're going to go by with the audit and how you'll make your selections and those elements. So you can, I mean, unless I'm speaking out of turn, but I think because it's here, you can create that ad hoc here tonight if you know what, who wants to be on it kind of thing.
Remember?
Can't all four of us be the ad hoc committee?
I don't believe we can, because then it would be a quorum. Right, three or...
Oh, then it would be a formal.
It would be a
okay,
formal
okay.
thing, so it has to be max 2.
Okay,
So
okay.
with Executive Director McDermott's recommendations here,
Mhm.
I do think that we should keep with just two board members, and we just do it kind of ad hoc as we go. So I think the first one could be start into the month, beginning of May, for the 2 board members and the CPOA, and to really kind of just identify how we're going to do the audit, because as far we have not, the new board has not done it yet, so we need to figure out, and that and part of the policies and procedures will come into play with that, but it will be up to the audit ad hoc committee to do it. And so it's not going to be a regular occurrence, but it's just going to be ad hoc. So does that sound?
Yeah.
With that said, members, I'd like to be on that one personally for audits. Who does anyone else have a burning passion to do the audits?
Is there going to be math?
Maybe.
Man, oh man. Okay.
So, I can't after the math. Okay, yeah, so it would be myself and then member Bunar to be part of the ad hoc audit committee. Is it a committee if it's ad hoc? Yeah, okay, cool. Does this one I need to vote? Because the last one I didn't need to vote. Okay. So then I make a motion to create the ad hoc committee for semi-annual audits. And the members of the ad hoc committee will be member Bolianis, myself, and then member Bunaro. May I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Barella, may I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianis?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimer?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passed unanimously.
Thanks, Ms. Barella. Next order of business is APD policy recommendations. The first one up is SOP-1-41 evidence unit. Deputy Director Abbasi.
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Board. We met on April 3rd at the Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee, and we had extensive discussions on all the policies that are listed within the recommendation section. The first one, SOP 1-41, we just have one recommendations that we even discussed at the Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee. The recommendation was just adding some clarity language in a section that talks about tagging the property found items. There is a reference of holding items for 90 days, and then at the end of that provision, it talks about holding it for 180 days. So we just recommend adding clarity to just explicitly state 90 days. We had discussion with the policy owner during PPRB, and he said that they hold it for 90 days and not 180 days. So we just wanted to have 90 days explicitly stated in the policy.
So to add to that, so that's just more for clarification. There was no modification from the CPOA subcommittee on that. We agreed with the findings, or sorry, we agreed with the recommendations from the CPOA, and we support it.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Board members have any questions?
No.
All right. Great, now I got to read the long statement here. I make a motion to that we approve the recommendations for SOP 1-41 evidence review. May I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Berlin, may I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thanks, Ms. Berlin. Next is SOP-2-3, formerly 2-22, firearms and ammunitions authorization.
Yes.
Deputy Director Abbasi, sorry, I'm struggling busting down.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Honorable Board. We reviewed this policy during the subcommittee. The policy comments actually were due today, so we ended up submitting a recommendation on behalf of the CPOA. There was one minor issue in the SOP which stated that this concerns the new red dot rifle scopes, and it's in the policy it stated all rifles issued after the publication of this policy shall use department issued optics. We made a slight change, we recommended a slight change of eliminating the word after the publication of this SOP and recommended adding a particular date, because the next time the SOP would be presented, then it would kind of create some confusion. However, I mean, we're being more proactive. The department may already do it when it comes for review the next year around, but we added that recommendation, and we did not have any other recommendation for this SOP.
And to the point of Deputy Director Abbasi, this was required to be turned in yesterday, correct? It was required to be turned into APD yesterday?
Yes.
So they submitted these recommendations already, so there is no action on our behalf.
Okay.
Due to that fact of that. In the event, if we do find something in the future, we can obviously do that in the next iteration or pull it out and do an ad hoc on it if we need to. But for this one, there's no approval needed from us.
Okay, so with that, to ensure the clarity and transparency, the following SOP, SOP-23, formerly 2-22, firearms and ammunition authorization, does not have any recommendations to send to APD at this time. So next order of business is SOP-2-78, formerly 4-25, domestic abuse investigations. Deputy Director Abbasi.
Thank you, Chair. Board, this recommendation particularly just focus on rewriting the policy paragraph to remove unnecessary language and make it more direct. Currently, the policy provision states that it is the policy of this law enforcement agency to provide a proactive, victim-centered approach when responding to domestic abuse. Additionally, it is the policy of this law enforcement agency to take a position of zero tolerance for domestic abuse. Any domestic abuse incident will be thoroughly investigated, to include when law enforcement officers or individuals in position of power or influence are involved in domestic abuse. Our recommendation is just to eliminate some of the verbiage from there to make it more direct. And I'll just read it for the record. We recommend rewriting this policy provision to, it is the policy of this law enforcement agency to provide a proactive, victim-centered response to domestic abuse. The agency has a zero tolerance policy for domestic abuse and will thoroughly investigate all incidents, including those involving law enforcement officers or individuals in position of power or influence. The substance and the content remains the same, but unnecessary language like additionally, it is the policy, and to take a position of zero tolerance has been removed, and its just recommendation is to rewrite it for more clarity.
Thank you, Deputy Director Abassi. Any, Member Calderon, any comments?
Subcommittee supports the recommendations to condense and clarify the purpose of the policy. As we've learned, our goal, of course, is to ensure consistency across all policies with APD and procedures that we do. So this helps with that, and it actually, I feel like it embodies the sentiment of domestic abuse and the feelings of APD behind it, right?
Yeah, zero tolerance.
And zero tolerance, right? It's not like, oh, it's an option.
Yeah, no,
it is the tolerance, right? There was zero of it. So we support that.
Any comments, questions from the other board members?
No.
All right. With that, I make a motion that we approve the recommendations for SOP 2-78, formerly 2-25, domestic abuse investigations. 4-2. Can I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Burla, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimer?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Burla. Next order of business is SOP 2-92, Crimes Against Children Investigations. Deputy Director Abbas. Oh, Executive Director McDermott now.
Yeah, I'm taking this one.
All right.
So, as the subcommittee met and discussed this, and there was originally a recommendation that through discussion then we decided to remove. However, during that subcommittee, it came to my mind, but I didn't have much of a chance to have it ready for the subcommittee, of a concern that we have had as an agency in the past. And this is a very niche issue, so, but the issue being searches of children for looking for injuries, basically. Examinations, I guess is a better way to phrase it. Especially when a child is very young or nonverbal, so they can't point out where their injury is or either express, no, I don't want you to look at me, or yes, or whatever. We have a couple of possible suggestions of language, but it's vague. My concept, at least, to bring to the board here is if the board feels that there is a need for the department to clarify under what circumstances and how that type of an examination should occur, we could at least, as the board or agency, recommend that the department consider that and add some sort of clarifying language in it. Because we've had complaints where individuals say, well, this child was distraught because it was these strangers that were sort of, manhandling or looking them over, and they didn't have a familiar face, or they were distressed. We've had other complaints where allegedly the activity occurred in some sort of more public forum, so it didn't have the more privacy type of issues. So again, we've had a few complaints here and there over the time. There's been concerns with, past boards having a similar distress over the way it's not clarified in the policy. There's a lack of clarification in the policy of how that should be conducted, whether it's same sex, whether there's some kind of familiar face that needs to be present, or under what circumstances will that occur. So that was the come to of maybe the board would want to at least express to the department of, we recommend that you clarify under what circumstances and a basic framework of how this would occur. Some of this may occur in training, but again, the policy is pretty silent on the whole issue, so there doesn't really offer any guidance. Some of the phrasing that we came up with kind of just talks about that, like basically be reasonable. You obviously have to have some good cause to do so. So there are some language things that we could add in, but that's if the board is wanting to go forward with that. That was the sort of motivation that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. That has it happened very recently, somewhat, but it's a fairly rare circumstance. So
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Director Abbasi, do you have anything? Okay. Subcommittee.
What do the board members feel about pushing forward that recommendation to APD that they create this criteria within that policy, since the policy is absent with it? At the subcommittee level, we felt that it's an appropriate ask to ask them, right, to create this criteria, so it's clearly established in SOP, but we wanted to bring it to the full board's attention to see what the remaining two board members thought, if we should push that towards APD for them to work towards that, to creating that. Obviously, it's a recommendation, so they can deny it and tell us no, and at that point, we can inquire more if needed, but myself and Member Weimark thought it would be wise to bring it to full board for consideration.
I will absolutely think it is 100% needs to be, that verbiage needs to be added, right? Because our job is to help clarify stuff that, again, training is already done, and then also to improve. And again, I'm biased. I have some family members who are autistic as well, and I have seen where nonverbal can definitely be a thing, especially with I can't even think of the word now.
Communicative.
Faces that are, not a known entity, right? A non-familiar face, thank you. So yeah, this definitely needs to happen to get that verbiage out, to add a little bit more step-by-step process. I remember Budnaro is the only one who hasn't weighed in yet.
I have an intimate knowledge of CYFD and some of the issues they had with APD as well, and anything that is clarifying and anything that will make anything much more transparent when it comes to child welfare, I'm all for.
Now, the real question is, can I make a motion to encompass all of that? Because I might leave it to you, Member Calderon, to make that, because you were the one in the subcommittee, so I'm going to make that fall to you.
I'll try to pull it together. No comments? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard something.
That's what I thought I heard.
We're not the only one. So make a motion that we make a recommendation to APD that they include language within the SOP 2-92 crimes against children investigations on the process and the standards of how they go about searching children or investigating for abuse or physical abuse and markings, and that they create a formal documented process for that. I get a second.
Seconded.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Brilla, can I get a roll call vote?
Thank you. Who seconded that motion?
I'm sorry?
Did you second that motion?
I did second that
Okay.
motion.
Thank you. I didn't hear that. I was still writing. All right. Member Bolianitz?
Approved.
Member Budinaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thanks, Ms. Brilla.
Deputy Director and Executive Director, did that suffice on direction?
Chair, Member Calderon, you talked about making a recommendation of APD adding some language to have some process and standards listed within the policy. Do you have anything in mind, or do you suggest some language? Because the way the smart sheet form works, we have to provide a justification and reasoning of why we are making the recommendation and then provide the actual recommendation for APD to incorporate. This policy is due very soon. If the board wish to do additional research and then write a formal letter to the chief, if that would be another route. But if the board have any specific language that they can come up with, or you can delegate us to come up with a language and recommend it.
Can I delegate you guys to create the initial, and then we can do it through? Council's like, ha.
I mean, again, it's typically the smart sheet wants to have very specific
Right.
language, and we can come up with some draft language for it. And again, the policy owner will either accept, deny, modify, and then we bring it to the board and say, this is the response that we received, and then
Right.
based on that response, the board either chooses to move forward with a response via the chief, as we've done with a few of these, or tables it and kind of like puts a pin in it until the next time it comes around with more information. So, but a concept is okay. Obviously, they prefer more specific,
Right.
but, and we can, like I say, come up with some proposed, at least general language that says,
Right.
this is a problem, this is what should be illustrated.
Is it worth reaching out to a behavioral health specialist who specializes, like a CYFD specialist who deals with these situations more, to then get some better guidance for APD, right? Because if we're worried about verbiage and how to best handle an SO and really build a good SOP, we should get the specialist to say, hey, if, you know, this is what we would like to see, right? Or is that outside of feasibility?
I mean, I would love it, right? In a perfect world, this policy is due by 4/16.
Unless we pull it out of.
I mean, we can pull it out of and do like a out of cycle, but it's in cycle right now. So
Right, it's in cycle, but then we could also send a letter to Chief Medina.
we could submit a very simple recommendation, and and then if they decline it, then we can send a letter to chief. It can't, you have to wait,
Yeah,
you have to wait for that
okay.
process to go
No,
down. You can't just
that's
send a
right.
letter to the chief immediately.
So, just for the board's edification, I mean, so we did come up with some potential language just in anticipation. Again, I wasn't sure how it was to go, but this is one thing that we had as a thought. Sworn personnel may conduct a search or examination of a child or juvenile only when they have reasonable suspicion that the search or examination could lead to evidence of criminal or safety concern. If a search is to be conducted, searches shall be conducted in a manner that is reasonable under the circumstances and respects the juvenile's privacy and dignity. So that was, you know, some proposed general language that kind of gets to the point. Now, if we're wanting to get more specific in terms of the how-to, then that is both good and bad. Typically, APD doesn't put like the real like step 1, step 2, step 3
Right.
in a policy, but this is to at least get the idea that this process, this examination process, should be considered at least in a certain way rather than it being, like I said, silent on the issue.
I'm okay with that for that initial iteration. I'm okay with that language, because it does put it in there and it does start the process, right? Could we refine it in the next iteration?
Right.
Very well could. And at that point, we can actually have more cases and more
data behind it?
More data behind it, and as well more professional opinions behind it, right?
And
But
I was going to say, so we could propose that, get the response. Perhaps APD says either too generic or we want more or whatever. Then to your suggestion, in preparation of a possible response to the chief, where it would then be an off-cycle kind of thing, we can probably reach out to like a CYFD investigator or something like that and get that more information. But because this is an in-cycle policy, and we probably as a board and as an agency don't want to make a habit of a policy was just heard, we didn't say anything, and then a month later we're like, okay, but wait, we want this.
Yeah.
It's like, so we want to be respectful of the cycle, and so we have an indication that there's a situation here, and then we can respond to it as opposed to we say nothing and then we have the issue a month or two down the road.
Yeah, then I think that's a good, at least it gets the ball rolling on our side. And we submit something. So yeah, I'm good with that. Board? I'm going to move on.
I'm okay with that language.
Cool. Yeah. I appreciate it. So with that, should I move on to, let's move on to the next order of business, SOP 2-103, trespassing notifications. Deputy Director Abbasi.
Thank you, Chair Boulianitz, members of the board. We have few recommendations for this SOP. One was just a general recommendation to include how long the criminal trespass notice stay active. We've seen cases in which trespass notice is active for 90 days. It is indefinite for private property in New Mexico, and we suggest or we recommend that the policy explicitly stating how long it stays active would be worth a while. The second recommendation we have for this one concerns the removing the necessary language. Basically, it talks about getting the signatures from some of the parties that are listed there, the owner, and the person who is in lawful possession of the property. It says the owner complete the criminal trespass form and obtain the following signature: the owner, leasee, proprietor, or any other person in lawful possession of the property. Sometimes the signatures do not need to be obtained if it is a case of a public building. For example, if a trespass notice is issued, for example, at the airport, it already has those things already filled out in the section of the owner. So we recommend adding that it explicitly states that. One other recommendation was brought up by an investigator in the agency. The SOP talks about redacting some of the information, but it doesn't explicitly states that which form should the information be redacted for the individual who is given the notice. For example, their personal identifying information, like their first name, date of birth, full social security number. That information is redacted only from the copy that is provided to the property owner or the person who is filing the criminal trespass, but it stays on the other copies that are given to the individual who is being trespassed, as well as the other copy that goes to the records division. So we just recommend rewriting and making it clear that the information should only be redacted from one particular copy and not the other two.
Yeah, so the purpose of both of these, of course, is to ensure that consistency is there, but consistency across all forms in APD, right? To ensure that they're the same for criminal trespass. Because if the airport has one, then outside the airport APD has one. We want to ensure that they're the same, right, and keep that consistency across the board. So that's the recommendation, and the subcommittee supports that. The second one, well, of course, was but the redaction.
Yes.
It's just more of clarity is what it is, to
call out PII.
Just call out that this is the form that should be redacted. Yep. The rest remain visible as normal. And so the subcommittee supports both these recommendations. And after discussion, so we support them.
Any questions, comments, concerns from other board members? Ed, you look like you were going to ask a question.
No.
Oh, you just asked that. Great. So I make a motion that we approve the recommendations for SOP 2-103, trespassing notifications. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Berlin, may I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thanks. The next order of business is on to the no recommendations for the policies. At this time, and to ensure the transparency for the following SOPs, they do not have any recommendations to be sent to APD. And those policies are SOP 1-56, formerly 6-12, horse-mounted unit. SOP 1-65, Metropolitan Court Protection Unit. SOP 2-15, Small Unmanned Aircraft Systems, SUAS Operations. SOP 2-43, Roadblocks and Checkpoints. SOP 2-51, Safe Driver Award Program. SOP 2-69, Informants. SOP 2-110 Facial Recognition Management System, SOP-3151 Department Orders. And just as a reminder, those SOPs do not have any recommendations to be sent to APD at this time. Next order of business, APD responses to policy recommendations. First one up is SOP-1-2, SOP-1-2, I keep going to add the dashes, social media. Executive Director McDermott.
Yes, Chair, thank you. So this was actually a little bit of an odd circumstance. So this recommendation was made quite a while ago, and somewhere APD didn't wind up getting a response to us. And so we had made the request, like, we're just trying to clean up, house clean. And so we got this response, and basically APD concurred, but not in an off-cycle capacity. They had basically held it to be for the next revision. Now, I don't recall exactly when 1-2 is coming around again, but that was the response that we got, because we'd made this recommendation back on, it looks like September of 24. And so we had just recently gotten the response of March of 25. So the SOP in theory should be coming around in this process here within the next few months. So it's up to the board whether or not it wants to directly respond in a off-cycle capacity. Again, the plan is supposedly to incorporate it based on the policy owner's statement for the upcoming revision. So it may not be worth trying to go push the issue when it's going to happen in a few months, supposedly. But
to support the executive director's thought process, the subcommittee agreed that it would be more beneficial to, they've already concurred with it, and they are going to implement it for future revision, so which should be this year anyways. I know this policy is nice and dear to your heart, but that we stand by and wait for that formal process to go through instead of us responding back and sending a letter up to the chief. That was our standing from the subcommittee, but of course we want to bring it to the full board for consideration. Yes, we want to save our letters to the chief for big things that are not concurred already.
Other board members, do you have any thoughts, questions, concerns?
No.
Oh, I get to be the dissenting one again. Fantastic.
We can
All
take
right,
a vote
Mr.
on
Baxter.
it.
I mean, so my thing is, if I'm me, right, and I'm looking to protect my own backside a little bit, I would want to put a special memorandum out to do this sooner rather than later, right? Like, especially with some of the stuff going on in the news with, which we'll get to, so we're just going to touch on it, the National Guard being deployed by the governor for support of APD, there might be some social media posts that probably might not want to be posted, right? So if we're looking at protecting this, like APD for not making social media posts, would that not want to be done sooner rather than later?
I think the issue is coming up, as the director mentioned, in the coming months.
Again, the policies are on a yearly cycle, so we'd have to take a look at when this is due, but this response was back in September of 24, so it's definitely going to be coming into the initial starting process, probably in the summer, and then coming up for actual PPRB review, again, obviously this year. So I understand what Chair Bolianis is saying. I don't 100% disagree with it, but at the same time, there is a little bit of a pick your battles kind of element to it. Just got the update. 10/15 of 25 is when it's going to be through that process. So I mean that feels like a long
6
time,
months.
but it's not, especially with the way the policy process works, especially if the board does want to go off cycle and make a recommendation. You're talking a month and a half before you'll even hear anything. So, you know.
It's not a hill I want to die on.
No, I mean,
I have bigger hills to die on. This ain't one of them. That's why I
I mean,
recommend.
the fact that they're just getting back to us now after what, again, 6 months? It's barely been half. Okay, this is where we need the vice chair to step in here.
So for this, I believe we should take a vote on it, so it's formal, and that there's actual record of what the recommendation of the board is, whether to accept it or to write a letter. So, are you okay with that?
It comes back to, we all want to be professional. 6 months is not acceptable.
It's not a hill I want to die on because
That's fair.
6 months does seem like a long time, but as well.
Well, I mean, also get back to us.
Right, and so if we do send this letter off now, right, they may not get back to us for about a month and a half, right?
3.
Or 2 because of our board meetings, they're only monthly, right? So we get our feedback till then.
It's not gonna,
And so by the time we get there, it might be in the normal process again. And so all of the effort may be for nothing because we're going to go through the normal process anyways. So they've already said that, yes, they want to include it. And they're going to do it for future revisions. So we ensure that in the future revision it's there, which we can put on our little ticker to keep track of and go from there. Again, we have bigger fish to fry, and I don't think this is one of them at the moment, especially because we do have confirmation that they're going to put it for the next revision. If we didn't have confirmation or they declined it in totality, it would be a different story. But since they didn't do that, I feel a little more secure in being able to give them the benefit of the doubt that they will add it to the next policy revision, but as well we will ensure by in doing our recommendations as well for it.
Mm-hmm. Board members?
So, take a vote.
Board members, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Make a motion.
So I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board holds off on making further notifications to the Chief of Police for SOP 1-2 social media, and we stand by for the normal review process that's happening later on this year. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Padilla, may I get a roll call vote? I'll do it for you.
Member Bolianis?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimer?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thanks, Ms. Barilla.
I'm amazed you actually said approved to that.
I mean, yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate that.
On to the next order of business, SOP 1-11, Transit Safety Section, TSS. Executive Director McDermott.
Thank you. So again, we had submitted recommendations. These were on-cycle type recommendations for 1-11. The first was recommend adding in accordance with 2-73 collection, submission, and disposition of evidence and property to the section of 111-6D1CI, adding that to that. So that was the first recommendation. And the response to that was agree with the concern. It should be added. 2-73 will also be referenced at the top of the policy. So they accepted that one. The second was if armed crimes is not the case, this should be clarified by removing armed. The response to that was I do not agree. The section discusses the defense of the TSO. The worm arm is to clarify when self-defense may be applicable and no changes would be made. So that was a denial. And the third issue being define the best witness possible within the definition section of 111.3. And the recommendation or the response there was this has been addressed several times and no changes will be made.
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Member Calderon.
So this is another one of do we want to die on this heel status? The reason being because the TSO's policy is brand spanking new. So it will be reviewed again, Deputy Director Abbasi, in 6 months, correct, from it being enacted?
Yeah, that is a new policy, so this will be on a 6-month cycle, so this will be coming up fairly soon. There's already, depending on what occurs with 1-78, there's going to be a need to make a recommendation or a change to this policy also, if say that aspect is approved. So this one's going to be coming up fairly soon. So if there's elements that the board wants to address again, the opportunity on cycle will be coming up fairly soon. As an example, the issue with best witness possible, the explanation we received was that legal had provided that terminology to APD, and of course it's a sanctionable policy. So our concern is if for some reason a complaint or an issue comes up and that is an element of it, how do we measure what best witness possible is? So that's our concern, but again, this is something that can be refined and is coming forth. There's going to be a lot of movement on this particular policy. So I don't have an example to provide to the board. I don't have a case that can say this is why this is a problem. Again, just being more proactive about it, I could foresee it potentially being a problem because of the way it's phrased. But until we have some concrete in that example, it may not be worth going down that road until either the policy comes back up or we have some more solid example of it.
Yeah, and so with that being said, so since we don't have an example of what, of course, it's risk mitigation, right? We love that as much as we can, but since the policy is going to come up in 6 months anyways, we believe that we should stand by, hopefully we don't get a complaint about it, but hopefully we have more data, or as well, legal can hopefully provide a better description of that by then. If not, we can recommend that at the time for the 6-month review again of that policy.
Right. Okay. Yeah, if it's a new policy and we're coming up in 6 months-ish, right, it's coming back up fairly soon, so. Other board members?
I agree.
I'm going to make one quick correction here. So
Yes.
we were just pulling up the policy, and again, I don't have an explanation for this. The policy is showing a year, but it's a new policy, and at least it's our understanding it's 6 months. So we'll get clarification on that, but I just want the board to know that at least as it's published, it shows a year. But as far as we understand, it should have been 6 months, but we can get clarification on that.
If you could provide clarification to the next subcommittee meeting, and then from there we could provide it to the board.
And then if that's the case, if the board wants to proceed with an off-cycle recommendation. So.
That's all subcommittee. Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Great. So with that, I do make a recommendation that the board holds off on any recommendations waiting for the next iteration of policy SOP-1-11 Transit Safety Section TSS. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolyanitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimer?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously, and just for the record, you did state you make a recommendation, but it was a motion.
Next is SOP-2-7, damage to civilian property. Executive Director McDermott.
So again, the recommendation was initially to clean up the language using personnel instead of officer. There's a section of this that talks about personnel. There's another section that specifically identifies officers. It was the belief that PSAs should be included, so therefore there was this recommendation to change to personnel rather than officer. The actual recommendation made was section pertains to all department personnel, but special direction is given to officers. For example, 274B1A, excuse me, and 274B1B say that the primary officer causing damage is to document this in uniform incident report, that the other officer causing damage is to document this in a supplemental report. These two sections, the primary officer must remain on scene until photographs of the damaged items are taken, and so the provision also pertains to PSAs and TSS. That was our assumption here. But there's no guidance on which PSA or TSSs will document the information. So that was our request, that change out officer, make a clarification. The response to that was, The TSSs and PSAs do need to file a report, but that the A and B only pertains to officers. So that was their explanation, that it is very clearly for officers, those particular tasks. So.
Yeah, this one was fun. We went around for like 20 minutes on this one specifically. So in the end, our understanding is from the subcommittee is that A and B is specifically just for officers, and TSS and PSAs are always supplementary reports, not primary reports. So officers are the primary reporters, and that's where we kind of got in the discussion of it. But once we got a little more clarification of it, those two A and B do apply to officers. TSS and PSAs do have to submit reports always by their SOPs, their separate SOP, but they are supplementary. They are never the primary for these issues specifically. And so with that being said, at the subcommittee level, we decided that, again, it's not a hill we want to die on, because it does state officers, and they do mean just officers. And then PSAs, TSAs do supplementary reports. So we agreed to bring to the full board for consideration to see if we did want to forward something to the chief of police, but we have no recommendation from the subcommittee for the formal board to review or consider.
I do have a question. Let's just say, hypothetically, that a TSS or a PSA runs into a wall and breaks up somebody's fence wall, right? The officer would then do a primary, right, even though it was TSA or PSA, but then they would do a supplemental.
Well, if they're involved in the incident themselves, they will not be doing their report. Like the initial report would be an
It would be a
officer.
supplemental.
Yeah.
It would, the officer is doing the initial.
Yeah, they would be a supplemental.
Now, with that said, if it was my wall and I wanted to file a complaint with CPOA, would the jurisdiction still fall to the CPOA to do that investigation and handle the complaint with TSS or PSA?
Currently, yes, the jurisdiction falls within the CPOA for basically all APD personnel, except when it comes to civilian employees, we do send those to IAPS, such as operators, substation personnel. When it comes to PSAs and TSSs and CSSs and things like that, there's a little bit of a discussion between the department and the agency right now regarding that, but it is the agency's position that they are performing functions that, at least currently, are investigated by the CPOA, and that's how it's handled right now.
So with that, I would think that the TSAs and PSAs do need to file a report, because then that way it's audible and tracked, just in case.
I only laugh because that's exactly what I said.
Yeah, no, this is a hill, this is a hill I'm going to die on.
TSSs and PSAs have to, by their SOP for their positions, they do have to file reports, but they are considered supplementary. They are not the primary officer, is what it is.
Agreed. Oh, that's fine. Okay.
That's
so the whole
hang-up.
argument is around primary.
Initially, the argument was about changing officers to personnel. So it included TSSs and PSAs, but then the owner, it's not service owner, but the owner of the policy came back and said they didn't agree on it because those A and B was specifically to officers, because officers are the primaries on those policies or on those actions. Does that make sense? So for that policy, those officers are the primaries, and that duty is specific to only officers, to sworn officers, not TSSs or PSAs. But TSSs and PSAs have to file reports on their own SOP for their guidance of their position. So we make no recommendation at that point to change anything because it was specific to officers. Those two guidelines.
For the primary incident report.
Yes.
That is very confusing.
I legit said the same thing you said, and so Diane and Ali had to go back and forth with me for a while to ensure I understood it. And then, of course, we submitted that they changed it to personnel to suffice that, but then they came back with this, and it helped us clarify a little more.
Okay, I guess I'm the weird one. Other board members, any questions?
It is a weird one.
It is I mean, I would like it rephrased personally, but that's not this, because that is.
And that's not the hell I'm going down right now for rephrasing.
Yeah, that's not, yeah. So if that's only around primary, not, because when I see TSS and PSA do not need to file a report, that irks me. Right, but if they said does not need to file an initial or primary report, I'd be like, oh, okay. The fact that this individual says do not need to file a report.
Yeah,
that's, I guess. That's,
They said they do need to, if I misspoke, but they say they do need to
Yeah, it
file
says
a
do.
report.
It
It's
does say
just
do.
not the A and B part.
oh, gosh.
So
I guess
bottom
I do
line
need
is.
He's just adding letters.
I can't read.
Okay.
Okay,
Just
sorry.
clarifying. So yes,
My brain
reports are
is-
written. It's not like they're not.
Okay.
But these functions that are
Cool.
outlined
All right.
very
I kept
specifically.
reading do not for some reason in my brain. I was putting the word not. Okay, so I'm not crazy.
No, I read that as well.
This is two.
I know.
I know, but I keep saying do not. So at least I'll do the only one. Okay. In that case, yes, no recommendations. Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole that did not need to be down on.
I went
It
down
is-
it too, so you're fine.
Cool. All right. So with that, no recommendations for SOP 2-7, damage to civilian property. Right. So there's nothing to really
And
do.
just to clarify, you're actually just kind of, if you needed to make a recommendation to respond to this,
Yeah.
then you'd make your motion, but in this
Yeah,
case,
we're not.
you're
Yeah,
choosing
we're
not
not
to.
doing it.
You're informed of what we're going to do.
Yep,
We're not
we're
going to do
informed.
anything,
Yep.
that's it.
Cool. Sorry, I was going down rabbit holes on that I did not need to go down on.
I went down it too, so you're fine.
Okay, so next order of business is other business. Any board members have any other business to bring up?
Weren't we going to bring up the timeliness?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me go. I can do it real quick.
Go ahead.
Executive Director McDermott and Deputy Director Abbasi. Our question for board members was, because there's two cases that were delayed. In the event that any future cases are delayed, what is our process to ensure that there's communication with the appellant, or not appellant, but the complainant? Is there a formal process of, like, let's say you're delayed by 3 weeks or 4 weeks? Are you formally reaching out to that person to advise them that we have it and we're still looking, we're still working on it, it's just we're not there yet?
So when an individual is requesting information, they are receiving that. Maybe not from me personally, but they are receiving that information. So both appellants here weren't 100%, on that.
That was a different time.
I do discuss, but I also, staff is fairly capable of providing the updates and the information as well. So they do receive the information when they contact us. We have had numerous, like I say, different complaints and cases that there is not a formal, like, reach out to everybody and let them know. It's more of a case-by-case basis because many of these cases are in a review state, like the investigation has actually been completed. But I'll be quite frank, there are a lot of reviews, and we have only recently had some additional staff that can help with that process. It's so far been solely in my lap, and it's only until recently. So we are working through those as expeditiously as possible, and as people reach out, sometimes, that gets shifted up a little higher because, okay, they're asking. But we are trying to go through them in a logical manner, get the responses, and we're working towards the goal of eliminating all of that.
Let me ask a question. Right, just because we want to address it due to the appellants here, is there a process or something we could do, right? Because we're still kind of catching up, to my understanding. Is there a way to kind of just communicate or have some of the customer service, customer relation building professional that we're asking for, out of office people, or just communication to people currently in waiting or for timeliness, right? Just say, hey, we're taking a little longer, sorry, right? Even just a little personal touch, email, something like that.
So personnel-wise, we're still restructuring various personnel and various duties. So I'm not going to promise anything to the board that I can't deliver on. So I cannot tell you that I will, by this date, reach out to everybody or check in or things like that. What I can say is that, the agency does respond to individuals who have concerns and questions, and we address those cases that, are being inquired about.
Right.
So we're, like I say, we are restructuring duties and responsibilities within the agency. We have plans to have more, I guess you'd say, get back to customer service centric of being more responsive, sending a letter in the first time when they get a complaint, things like that. But with a lot of different staffing challenges and issues, we're not there yet, but we're working on that.
I guess my biggest thing is it's a goal, right, to get there. Because like you said, you guys are just coming out of a slew of shenanigans, a lot of staffing issues, and and the investigations are not stopping, right? So you're trying to catch up while still receiving stuff. Yeah. And my initial thought process, like maybe even how APD has their policies up for review on a website, Excel spreadsheet that they control. Maybe it's something like that, right? You just have the case number, and the person gets their initial, we received your complaint, so they get their case number, and maybe it's just a little tracker there or something like that. But it's just, I don't want you to give a date because that's unattainable. It's a matter of making it a goal, right? That we do go back to that customer service centric aspect that you're talking about. And then we just work towards that. That's the biggest thing, right? Just because those two cases they're severely old, right? And those are some of the older cases from even the prior board. And so now that we see some of the appeals now, we're not having those issues as much, right? Yeah, there's some delays, but they're not as extensive as those ones. Those are very, very rare cases. And I told the chair that, I was like, these cases are very rare, and that's not the common thing. And that's when transition of director, transition of staff, transition of a lot of things. So it's just a matter of us getting to that customer service centric and making it a goal, right? And figuring out the tasks to get there. But just that we're showing to the public that we are trying, right? And that we are, we want to be as transparent as possible. I mean, we have your case. Yeah, we're looking at it. Sorry, it's taking longer, but as well, you have a limited number of investigators and a limited number of people to review every single one of those. And we want to make sure they're done correctly, diligently, and factual, right? So we can provide that to the public. And so thank you guys for working on that. So we appreciate it. It was just a question that we brought up in a discussion from the last case. And so we just want to talk about other businesses to ensure that we are understanding and aware. And
yeah, it's certainly, we're well aware and very cognizant of these issues. And it's not how we choose to operate. It's not how we normally operate. And I can't speak for, there's a lot of things that have been outside of my control until being officially appointed. And that, that makes a difference. That was last year. So I have about a year to fix a lot of problems that maybe have generated. And I've been with the agency a long time, but not necessarily in certain positions to be able to control all of the things. And there are a lot of things outside of our control.
Right.
As the board heard tonight, we received 80 complaints in 1 month. Now, did all of those get assigned for investigation? No, but about over one a day did. And so when you only have so many investigators, you can only process through so much. And then, like I say, until recently, reviews are even more stale. So the investigations get done, but in order to make sure they're done correctly and make sure that there's no points missed, I trust my staff, but at the same time, I'm the one who have to sign my name to it. So I have to make sure that it's all,
And it goes back to my point of standards, right? We have standards that we're trying to instill in the team, right? So that the reports are consistent, concise, and they're the same each time in the sense of character, right? And so, and you guys are working on that, and you and Deputy Director are both working on that. And so we acknowledge that, and we appreciate that. You're trying to set these standards in place so that our reports are consistent across the board. As the same standard that we hold for IAPS and IAFD, that those standards are consistent, and they're working on theirs as well, right? So that the public does get the same quality of reports, right? No matter what the case is. And so we appreciate that you guys are working on that. It's just, something we want to bring up because, of course, those two cases do shed a light on us, and we want to ensure that the public is aware that it's something that we're aware of and we want to work on it, and we are working on it. But, of course, there are other things that are sometimes take priority on it, too, because, well, investigations take priority on anything, whether they're late or not, right? So thank you guys. I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are doing great work. You guys had shenanigans, for sure. Any other business from the board members?
None.
Well, unfortunately, I'm the person that's doing it. I know. So one thing too that I want to bring up, right? This board has now been running for a little over a year. And so now that we have some experience and know how things are going, I want you guys, and giving you guys some homework for the next board meeting or so, is to come up with some ideas for ordinance enhancements, modifications, changes, whatnot from the ordinance. So re-review, I know we've all read the ordinance more than once pertaining to CPOA and CPOA board. Reread it and come up with some ideas now that we've had some experience to make and modify, right, to help improve, right? Because now we have that under our belts. Sound good? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Cool. Sorry, I'm talking like no one's listening.
No, I just wanted to make one quick point that was reminded to me of for the last topic, and that's just so the board's aware. So because we are getting through these older cases and processing them, you might see more of that type of a thing.
Okay.
So just FYI. Great. And then to your point you just brought up, yes, both, the board and the agency, I know in discussions with the CCO, there's topics that might be for ordinance revisions. The monitoring team has brought it up to the council a couple of times about there might be, there might not be. So again, the individual feelings and comments, or feelings is the right word, but ideas that each member has to bring forth so that then we can, either a working group or ad hoc or something to coalesce them into an actual specific recommendations. I know the agency has a lot of it, some minor, some major, and the board may feel the same way on some certain points. And I know the CCO, like I said, has a couple of issues as well. So I think between the collaborative nature, then we can actually put forth a decent document to the council to consider.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Yeah, I think that's great points. So, yeah, sorry, you guys have homework for next meeting, besides the additional stuff. And then the last one that I want to bring up is I know I am really kicking you guys today. I apologize. Something that I think we all are curious about is, and I believe we all saw on the news, and there's not much to it, the National Guard being deployed by the governor. As far as my understanding on the media is per, the mayor and Chief Adina's direction is to bring the National Guard in. So I was hoping to get a presentation by next meeting from the APD and whoever it might be on the National Guard deployment, the why, the details, for clarity for us, right? Because I guarantee you we're going to probably hear about it. And the only thing that we know is what has been published in the newspaper and the interwebs, right? So, are you guys kind of on board with getting that detail from APD about the National Guard deployment to Albuquerque?
Well, it'd be good to know the length of time it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously, I assume it's finite.
We don't know, right? Only thing we know is what's on.
Well, that's why it'd be good to know.
Yeah.
The mic's not on.
Oh, turn it.
Oh, I thought you could already hear me with my brilliantly carrying voice. I do apologize. Do I need to repeat myself? It would be good to know the length of time the Guard is expected to be here. I mean, it might be that they can't even predict that, but I assume that it's finite, that they're not going to be here.
And the roles and responsibilities. Executive Director McDermott?
It is, I don't know if you want to make more of a delay until another month. I don't know. There's possibility of 6 months, maybe longer. It might be too soon to get an actual presentation by May. I'm not sure. If you want me to explore that, I can. I'm just, throwing it out there that you may not have much in the way of information because it is a fairly new thing that by next month may not have a lot of
Well,
information to provide, so.
Yeah, one of the things, and I guarantee you, board member Calderon is gonna probably disagree with me, is even if it's not fully vetted yet, I wanna know something. Because not knowing anything, I think, is my type A is coming out.
I would say, what's the feasibility of receiving a report first? Because if it is too preliminary, they're gonna give us exactly what the media gets, and that's it. And so it does us no justice, right? It does us no good to request this if they're just gonna give us the same thing they give the media. We want to ensure that there's at least some data there. So I would say, I would recommend that we ask the CPOA to see the feasibility of receiving a report other than what the media already received, is what I would say. And it looks like, Ms. Rosenbrough?
No, that's who I was.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And board, I can provide some preliminary information if the board is interested. I know the board has talked about what you've seen in the media reports, and so it's possible some of the information I'm about to share with you, you are already aware of. But Chief Medina wrote a letter to the governor that outlines the specific areas that the requests were for. If you haven't seen that letter already, we can probably provide that, and I can read certain portions of that to you as well. In the governor's executive order, which was signed earlier this week, it doesn't provide as many details as the board may be seeking, but it does provide further information as to the plans for the deployment, the time period. As of right now, what the order states is it shall take effect immediately and remain in effect until all authorized funds are expended or no longer necessary to provide emergency assistance. And the funds are in the area of the amount of $750,000. And that's outlined in the governor's executive order. So those are two documents that I think might provide some initial details. Again, it's not going to provide a detailed report. I can share that fine details further than what's here is being worked out. But I think this might answer some initial questions. And then I would agree with the executive director that given that this is expected to begin in mid-May, waiting till June for more information might bear greater fruits in that case. But
First, I want to direct to Member Weimar.
I'm wondering if it might be more helpful to have the information after the fact, to have more of an analysis of what happened, to say whether it worked or didn't work, how effective it was, how useful it was. I'm just throwing that out there, that it might be more helpful.
Yeah, I want both. Let me be very clear. Once it's all said and done, I'm going to want the after action report.
I think and the findings. I think to the point of that both, I think to Ms. Rosenbrough's point, I think we can see the feasibility for what their intentions are, right? Request that, and then of course advise them that at the end of it, or even midway through it, depending on how it's going to last, we are looking for some report of some type at that time, something of the report at that time as well. And of course, an after action would be wonderful as well.
Well, I was going to say, Mr. Rosenbaum, I do want to get that information, the letter and the executive order.
Yes.
To us. So I want to make sure we address that. And then, yes, I do think, to everyone's point.
I've made a point,
Except for Member Budinaro, maybe June is the right time to get an initial. By the time we'll get some of that, and then maybe halfway, and then after action.
Can we see if they can present something for May's board meeting, whether it's preliminary or not, on top of what she provides?
Right. See if it's a value add.
Right. See if there's a value added to it. If there's not, then at that point, there's no point.
So just so I'm clear, the board is asking for, and I'm not even sure, maybe Ms. Roseborough can help me figure out who that would go to, but the board is asking for a preliminary report, statement, something in May that goes beyond what might be in the executive order and the letter.
Can we scope? It's going to be an initial, right? So if they can provide a scope of what the intention is, right? Hopefully that helps a little bit with the wording.
Yeah.
Okay. I will work with ABD to try and figure out what that might look like, and then we'll go from there, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And then Absolutely, we would love to get the letter and everything, and the executive order, just for us to read through, because I guarantee you, we have our own questions that people are gonna ask us. Because I know people aren't asking me. So, yeah, and then after that, we can do that later. To Member Romark's point is, yeah, after this is all said and done, sorry, Weimar, I don't, oh, don't ask me. Come on. Not today. Yeah, we'll get that data for sure. I want that report. So, other than that, Member Budnar, anything else to add?
Got quite a bit to add. First of all, we know the scope of exactly what they're going to be doing, one. Two, what is the MOS of these people that are National Guard members? And three, I have huge constitutional concerns about citizens' rights. So I'm very curious what the scope is going to be. Who are these people? I mean, are they military police by designation, or are they engineers with a gun? I think that's something we need to know ahead of time, just for clarity.
Just a clarification, wasn't it? I read it in the paper this morning, they won't be armed?
I believe that's true. And so board, those are good questions. I don't have the answer to all those at this time. And I certainly think those are good questions that can be figured out prior to the next meeting. The initial information that I can provide is that these are the specific areas that Chief Medina requested support in. One is scene security and traffic control at critical incidents. Again, a role that is typically given to PSAs, so non-sworn officers. Medical assistance and humanitarian efforts along Central Avenue, which is to include guardsmen can distribute food, water, and essential supplies to individuals experiencing homelessness and other vulnerable populations. Prisoner Transport Unit, that's the unit that transports people from downtown to the jail on the west side. Assisting transit security, Metro Court security, aviation, the SHIELD unit, which is the unit that prepares records for preparation for court, and the APD drone program. So these are, by and large, in positions that are civilian, non-sworn positions. They're not here to be making arrests, as I understand it. So that is the initial information that I have. But of course, a fuller report can be provided at the next month if the board seeks it.
Thank you. Great, thank you so much. All right, with that, on to the next order of business, adjournment. So our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held not on a Thursday, but on a Wednesday, for fun facts. Wednesdays, mark it in your calendar. Wednesday, May 7th at 5, right here in these chambers. With that, I make a motion to adjourn at, oh man, I closed, at 9:25 p.m.
I second.
Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bolianitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Wemark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barella. Thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.